Hello and welcome guys. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. This is Affinity, Chaos, Chapter 711. I think you're their target, Alice whispered to Reynolds. It's understandable. I'm the only one below the 5th stage. Reynolds shrugged, not feeling pressured by the gazes he was getting. At most, if things go out of hand, he'll summon his elemental warrior and send these guys packing. Leave the platform peacefully. A youth walked up to Reynolds and said. He didn't say it in a haughty manner. It was more like an advice. If I didn't want to take part in the competition, I would have registered for the competition in the first place. Don't you think so? Reynolds asked. The youth sighed before attacking. It was a competition. He didn't know Reynolds, so there was no use in trying to force him to accept his advice. The best thing was to eliminate him from the platform. The youth was in the 5th stage of the Overlord plane, just like Alice, and he was a water elementalist. Boom. Alice stepped in front of Reynolds and blocked the attack with a fire attack. Steam rose into the air after the attacks collided. You don't need to worry about him. Your opponent is me. A young lady in the 6th stage walked forward and said to Alice. With 4 people already engaged, the remaining 16 people picked an opponent and started battling. They couldn't sit and watch as the others fought. Boom, bam, bang. Attacks moved from left to right, with 20 people focused on trying to eliminate each other. This was the first time Alice was fighting against someone above her stage, since they came to these high-leveled regions, and after the first few attacks, she was left gasping for air. Her opponent was powerful, definitely well above her. If she were to bring out her Seelie, then she would be able to get an advantage, since she would be attacking from 2 places. Reynolds was also having a tough time with his opponent. The young man who attacked him didn't give him any chances to recover as he attacked continuously. Reynolds's body was coated with lightning as he dodged the attacks coming his way. The few he was unable to dodge, we blocked with his elemental attacks. These people are on a different level, Reynolds exclaimed internally. Even after the warning from Gray and Kyle, he never thought the difference would be this big. His current opponent wouldn't have a problem with fighting against someone in the 8th or 9th stage, back in the Azure continent. Wow, Klaus was stunned. Seeing both Alice and Reynolds being suppressed by people who were only a stage above them was a sight he never thought he would see. Of course, if the duo went all out, then they wouldn't really have any issues with fighting against their opponent. Shocked, Kyle asked. Not really. I just didn't expect I'll see them suppressed this much. Klaus smiled wryly. Now he was starting to worry for himself and his chances of getting into the faction he wanted. Why am I bothered? At most I'll trick my opponents. He thought to himself. If he couldn't beat them, then he would annoy them till they give up. All is fair in war. This really isn't surprising. They haven't gone all out, Kyle said. He had seen the duo in full power, so he knew they were stronger than this. Furthermore, there are also the trump cards they might have hidden from him. How are you sure their opponents have gone all out? Klaus asked. Simple. Kyle pointed at the young lady fighting against Alice. From her expression, you can easily tell that she wants to make sure she eliminates Alice. She would want to do it in a domineering fashion. Alice wouldn't lose to her even with her hiding most of her strength. Gray commented. Naturally, but I want them to win in style. Well, they would do it when they challenge members of the faction, Klaus said. While the group were talking about the battle raged on. Alice was slowly started to get used to fighting against the young lady. Just like Alice, the young lady was a dual elementalist wielding both the fire and earth element. Powerful attack complemented with powerful defense. She was a tough opponent. When the young lady saw that she couldn't take care of Alice as easily as she thought, she slowed her pace of attacking. Since Alice focused on defending, it was impossible for her to force her way through. The best option was to think of a plan. Reynolds was exchanging attacks with his opponent, but he was still suppressed by his opponent. Luckily, he was faster than his opponent, so he could dodge most of the attacks. The young man fighting against Reynolds created multiple ice shards that shot at Reynolds with incredible speed. Seeing the ice shards, Reynolds, who was covered with lightning, moved around quickly. To those in a lower stage, all they could see was a flash of lightning moving around in the platform. The young man gritted his teeth in frustration. Reynolds barely traded blows with him. Once he counters once, he would turn tails and run. Then whenever the opportunity presents itself, he would counter once again. The young man has been able to block all of the attacks so far, but he knew there is a possibility of him being unable to block one. The second he was hit by an attack, then he was defeated. Reynolds would take advantage of it and send him out of the platform, eliminating him. Bam! A lightning bolt struck the ice wall that the young man made in front of him. Cracks started to appear on the wall, and with another attack, the ice wall shattered to pieces. The young man's pupils dilated when he realized that immediately the ice wall was destroyed when another attack came at him. This meant that Reynolds had already predicted that the previous attack would be able to destroy the ice wall, so he hid an attack behind it. The young man didn't panic. A water dome appeared before him as he tried to use the water to slow down the lightning bolt, giving him the time he needed to evade the attack. After sending out the stream of water, the speed of the lightning slowed down significantly. Seeing this, he moved to the left, away from the lightning and also the water stream. When Reynolds saw this, he smiled before moving 2 steps back. Crash! Bang! A lightning bolt fell from the sky at breakneck speed. Before the young man could even sense the attack, it had struck him in the head. Reynolds had been preparing this attack for some time now. He had already guessed that the young man would move to the left. He had been watching the young man since they were fighting and realized for some reason, the young man preferred dodging to the left most of the time. All according to plan, he thought to himself with a chuckle. Before the young man could recover from that attack, Reynolds charged towards him and sent him flying, sending him off the stage. The young man had been eliminated. This was someone who was a stage above him and powerful, yet Reynolds managed to eliminate him with careful planning. Smart, Kyle commented when he saw the final outcome of the battle. Of course. Do you think that he's dumb? He may act dumb sometimes, but he's pretty smart, Klaus said. He studied his opponent and planned accordingly, Gray said. They all saw the fight, and every single person in the arena knew that Reynolds took a gamble with that attack. The speed at which the attack came meant that he had already prepared it. If the young man had moved to the right instead of the left, then his plan would have been thwarted. This would have made him feel disorientated, giving his opponent the chance to get at him. Alice was still fighting against her opponent. Unlike Reynolds' opponent, the young lady didn't give her the chance for her to counter. Even though she was still on the back foot, she was still able to hold on. The duo was still fighting when they heard the voice of the man in charge of their platform. "You can stop fighting now," the voice said. They paused and turned to look at the man, before looking around only to realize that they were the only two fighting. Counting with their eyes, they noticed that including them, they were 10 people left in the platform. This meant that the others had been eliminated. "Good battle," the young lady said. "I enjoyed myself," Alice replied. She walked over to Reynolds and they walked back to their seats. Reynolds was the only one who drew some attention due to his careful planning. There are also a few people who watched Alice's fight with the young lady and found her impressive. "We made it to the next round." Chapter 712. "Nice fight, but you should have beaten him sooner," Klaus commented when Reynolds walked closer to them. "I'd like to see how you would fare," Reynolds replied, his tone implying the obvious. "Let's see what you will be able to do against these monsters while holding back." "To be honest, I'd do just fine. Unlike you two, I need to make a grand scene," Klaus chuckled. Kyle shook his head, still baffled by the fact that Klaus still hasn't given up the idea of joining this all-girls faction. No matter how one looked at it, it seemed pretty much like Klaus wanting to join was mainly because he found out that it was an all-girls faction. Gray didn't have any issues with hiding his strength. It wasn't like he was going all out in the first place whenever he fought in competitions like this. Having 8 elements and using only 4 meant that he couldn't fight to his full potential. "My opponent isn't bad," Alice said. "Yeah, but you would take her out if you went all out," Kyle said. Alice smiled without replying. She knew Kyle was right. With the Seelie on her side, she wouldn't have any problems. It was just like Gray's inscriptions. She gained another means of attacking. She could either merge with the Seelie and be in control of all the elements, or she could let it out, and it would attack independently. The best way to utilize this is to battle with it frequently to improve their synergy together. Luckily, since getting the Seelie, she had been sparring with the group while they were traveling, so they had a good understanding of each other. The group continued speaking as they watched the others' battles. The number of people was too much, so one more round took place. After this round was completed, the remaining participants had to draw lots before fighting. Overall, in the mid-stages competition, there were around 400 people left. Whoever manages to get into the top 200 would get a chance of challenging anyone from the factions they wanted to join. While getting to the top 100 would guarantee joining a faction, only the top 10 had the best chances of joining whichever faction they wished. There have been cases where some factions fight over a genius. It rarely happens, but said genius must be extremely talented before they could get these people to make a move. By the end of the day, they were done with the brawl, and it was time for the draw lots. Reynolds and Alice had opponents in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. Alice didn't have an issue with dealing with someone in the 6th stage, but without Reynolds' elemental warrior, then he was as good as eliminated. "What are you going to do now?" Klaus asked. "Show off, of course," Reynolds said with a smile. "Going all out now would mean that the faction will know of your strength and send someone who can deal with you," Kyle warned. "Don't worry, I have a plan to deal with them," Reynolds reassured. Gray didn't have any fears for his friends. He had complete confidence in them. "We should rest tonight. Tomorrow is a big day for you too. Advancing means you can join whichever faction you want to," Gray said to the group. They all agreed with Gray and left the arena, heading home. Time went by and the next day came. The group went to the arena. Reynolds and Alice prepared themselves for the competition of the day. When they got there, they had to wait an hour before it got to their turn. Reynolds was the first person called up. His opponent was an Earth Elementalist in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. When Reynolds stepped on stage, he drew a few attention. After confirming from both participants that they were ready, the man in charge of their platform called for the start of the battle. "You should just leave. I saw your battle with that guy. You're not my opponent," the Earth Elementalist said. "You don't need to bother about that. We'll see when the battle starts," Reynolds replied. "HMPH. Better not waste my time," the Earth Elementalist said. From their short conversation, Reynolds knew he was a proud person. Defeating people like this gave him some sort of satisfaction. "I won't," Reynolds laughed in response. The Earth Elementalist didn't waste any time and attacked immediately. Being an Earth Elementalist meant lesser speed, but higher attack power. Reynolds dodged the attack coming his way before rushing to counter. The Earth Elementalist already knew Reynolds would take advantage of any mistakes, so he didn't even try to make any. With his Earth Element, he made sure his attack was effective, and his defense was even better. Boom! Reynolds blocked his attack before countering his attack. The speed of his attack was above that of this opponent, but unfortunately, his opponent was already prepared for it, which made it ineffective. Boom! Bang! The battle was intense, and no matter how Reynolds tried, he was unable to break the defense of the Earth Elementalist. The Earth Elementalist, however, didn't have any problems with his attacks. The strength of his attacks was on a level above Reynolds, while he only attacked when he knew it was necessary. Gray and the others watching the match knew that if things continued in this fashion, then it meant that Reynolds would be eliminated. But they knew he had a trump card which could keep him safe in this competition. If he summoned his elemental warrior, then he wouldn't have any issues with defeating those in the mid-stages of the Overlord plane without any issues. "When do you think he would call out his elemental warrior?" Klaus asked, patiently waiting for Reynolds to show off. "When he knows there's no way for him to defeat his opponent without it," Gray replied, before adding, "If I were him, I'd do the same." Alice and Kyle agreed with Gray's reasoning. They too would want to keep their trump card for when it was needed. Using it willfully wasn't really a good thing for them. "You think so? Why don't he just blow his opponent away? That would be showing off," Klaus said. Reynolds spoke of showing off, so he naturally wanted that. "Give him some time, and he will," Kyle said. "Okay." Klaus nodded while focusing on the battle once again. The Earth Elementalist Reynolds was fighting against didn't give him any chance to take advantage, slowly increasing the advantage he had. Reynolds had the advantage in speed, but his opponent still had the upper hand. The Earth Elementalist had been able to send him flying a few times. Luckily, he had been able to keep himself on the platform without being eliminated. The Earth Elementalist didn't seem to be worried about this, making sure he hid all the chances Reynolds would get to attack him. Just give up, you're only wasting our time. The Earth Elementalist said when he saw that Reynolds refused to give up after being sent flying for the 5th time. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before Reynolds was sent out of the platform. You think so? Reynolds asked. The Earth Elementalist nodded his head when he heard this. He didn't really mean this in an undermining manner, but the truth was that the present Reynolds wasn't his opponent. I have one surprise for you. If you can block this surprise, then I have no problems with giving up, Reynolds said with a smile. All right, be fast with it. The Earth Elementalist said. Here I come, Reynolds said and rushed towards the Earth Elementalist. Seeing Reynolds coming at him, he raised an earth wall, while waiting for Reynolds' attack. Boom. The earth wall shook vigorously. His expression changed. He knew Reynolds' attack wasn't as powerful as this. The Earth Elementalist was stunned. Just when he was thinking about what was making the wall shake so much, he saw it vibrate again. Boom, boom. Something powerful continued hitting it, and in the matter of a few seconds, it shattered into pieces. With the destruction of the wall, he saw something that shook him visibly. A summoner, he exclaimed internally. This wasn't his first time seeing a summoner, but he didn't think Reynolds was one, since he didn't use it the last time. The thing in front of the Earth Elementalist was made entirely of lightning, but it was different from Reynolds' usual elemental warrior. This summon was like a normal summon. It was Reynolds' secret weapon. Keeping his trump card would be useless if he doesn't even qualify. Being a high-grade summoner gave him an advantage. There's something few people knew about high-grade summoners, and that is they could lower the grade of their elemental warrior at will. This means that Reynolds could actually call out a normal low-grade summon. High-grade summoners rarely do this because what's the need of doing so? This is the reason most people don't know that there's such a skill. Even Reynolds' friends are unaware of this because Reynolds forgot to tell them. Chapter 713. You're a summoner. The Earth Elementalist was a little surprised. Summoners were also rare even in the Aurora continent. Reynolds stared at him without replying. Without any delays, he ordered the summon to attack the Earth Elementalist. Unlike his elemental warrior, this summon looked crude. It was like a monster made entirely of clumps of lightning. Bang! The summon continued its assault on the Earth Elementalist. The Earth Elementalist scurried to defend against the summon. Buzz! Crash! A lightning bolt shot from the sky, aiming at the head of the Earth Elementalist. The Earth Elementalist retreated back to dodge the strike, while creating a large earth hammer that he used to slam the summon. Boom, bam, bang. They exchanged blows in a heated fight. Wait, since when did it look like that? Klaus asked, shocked. I don't think it has ever looked like that since he acquired it. Gray replied, confused. They didn't understand why the elemental warrior didn't have its previous appearance. They turned to Kyle, hoping to get an explanation. However, Kyle still had a perplexed expression which showed that he had no idea what was going on. Looks like high-grade summoners have a secret ability we have no idea of, Alice commented. So it seems. The others agreed with her. But you have to admit, this is a terrific plan, Klaus said after a moment of silence. Yes, even when showing his trump card, he still kept most of it. The strength of this summon is only at the 5th stage of the Overlord plane, while the Elemental Warrior is at the 7th stage, Kyle stated. Thinking about it, the difference in strength between both summons was shocking. Bringing out this summon will deceive his future opponent, giving them the feeling that he couldn't fight against them. Then when he calls out the Elemental Warrior, his opponent would be too shocked to even fight back properly. While the group were discussing this, the crowd were excited when they saw Reynolds' summon. Most of the people here rarely see summons, so they found it worthwhile just being able to see it in this competition. Discussions broke out in different places, and even a few of the lower-ranked factions had their eyes on Reynolds. A summoner was a good asset if well-groomed. The higher-ranked factions couldn't really see Reynolds as someone special. Since the summon was this type, only a high-grade summoner could interest them. The Earth Elementalist Reynolds was fighting against was being pushed back as the battle continued. He had lost the advantage he had, and fighting against two fighters was not something he could do, especially given how Reynolds was shamelessly taking advantage of this fact, and putting more pressure on the Earth Elementalist. Stop attacking me from behind. The Earth Elementalist complained when he was unable to take it any longer. What do you mean? Whenever I attack, you're the one who foolishly turns your back to me. How's that my fault? Reynolds said, irritating the Earth Elementalist even more. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before Reynolds would defeat him. He's getting better at this, Kyle said with a wry smile. Seeing Reynolds' current fighting tactic, he recalled the first time they fought against each other. Reynolds shamelessly used this particular strategy on him. Even someone as cool-headed as him lost his cool. He gave up since he couldn't continue taking the assault. The Earth Elementalist seemed to be going down the same road as well. Reynolds was continuously assaulting him, almost driving him crazy. He couldn't attack Reynolds because of the summon, but once he faced the summon, Reynolds would attack from his blind side. Of course, I taught him all he knows, Klaus declared proudly. I don't think you're on his level, Kyle said. You have no idea what he's capable of, Gray said. Heh. Klaus laughed mischievously, sending chills down the spine of Kyle. Kyle knew Klaus was shameless, and loved to cause trouble from the small time they've been together. But when he battled Reynolds, he was frustrated to the extreme by him, so he concluded that there was no one who would be as shameless as Reynolds. You're just pure evil, Alice said when she heard his laughter. It's a gift. The world is a boring place without me. I can assure you that. Klaus laughed before placing his focus back to the fight. The others also turned their attention to the fight. Boom, bam. The Earth Elementalist was pushed back by the summon, and just as he was about to retaliate, Reynolds attacked as well, sending a lightning orb that exploded when it got close to him. Bang! Reynolds' attack connected with the Earth Elementalist, sending him flying. Seeing this chance, Reynolds sent the summon after him while also preparing for another attack. The Earth Elementalist managed to set up a good defense before crashing to the ground, so Reynolds was unable to eliminate him with the advantage. But the pressure on the Earth Elementalist increased greatly since the slip-up. After a few more minutes, the Earth Elementalist finally gave up. I admit defeat, he said after blocking an attack coming his way. Reynolds stopped attacking the second he heard this, and the man in charge of the platform stepped forward to declare the winner. From the second Reynolds brought out his summon and seeing his ingenious way of fighting, everyone knew without any other changes. It was certain that Reynolds would win. The only reason the Earth Elementalist tried to hang on for this long was because losing now meant he wouldn't be able to qualify for the next round. He was in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane, so he had a chance at advancing to the top 100. Unfortunately for him, he met an opponent who he thought he would defeat from the start, only to get the shocked, literally. Reynolds' lightning electrocuted him a few times. Thank you for letting me win. Reynolds smiled to the Earth Elementalist as he was leaving the stage. The Earth Elementalist on the other hand frowned but nodded at him. He had no grudges against him. After all, Reynolds won fair and square. On getting back to his seat, the group congratulated him on advancing to the next round. A piece of cake, Reynolds replied with a smile. How did you do that? Alice asked. Do what? Reynolds asked a little confused. Stop playing dumb. The summon. Since when could you do that? Klaus smacked him on the shoulder. Oh, that? I forgot to tell you guys. I can lower the grade of my summon at will, Reynolds said, after seeing the looks he was getting from his friends. He added, I originally didn't think I'll use it, so it was basically worthless information. This is my first time hearing this, Kyle said. Like I said, it wasn't really any useful information. Which summoner would send out a low-grade summon when they have an elemental warrior? Reynolds asked. Hearing his question, it finally dawned on them. Bringing out your summon means you're in a battle. No one would want to reduce their strength in battle. Even if your opponent was weaker, they would still fight at full strength. What else can you do? Klaus moved closer to him and asked, before adding, in case I fight against high-grade summoners, I wouldn't be too surprised. Nothing special, Reynolds replied. Come on Ray, you can tell me. Klaus started to pester him. In the end, Reynolds still had nothing to tell him. Other than this recent discovery, the group knew everything else. If there was something else they were unaware of, then he also wasn't aware of it as well. The group continued watching the next battles, and after almost 2 hours, it got to Alice's turn. Wish me luck, Alice said as she walked towards the platform. Good luck. All the boys raised their fists to show support to her. She laughed lightly and stepped on the arena. Her opponent was also in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane, just like Reynolds' opponent. But she was in the 5th stage, which meant she wouldn't be suppressed by her opponent. When her opponent stepped into the platform, it was a young lady. Hello. They waved at each other. The man in charge of the platform confirmed from both participants if they were prepared. After getting confirmation, he called for the start of the battle. Alice attacked the second the battle started. Buzz. Bam. A lightning bolt shot towards her opponent. The young lady didn't panic. With a wave of her hand, a tornado sprang up, blocking the lightning attack. After blocking the attack, she sent wind blades towards Alice. A wall of fire rose in front of Alice, trying to block the wind blades. The strength of the wind blades was stronger than Alice's fire wall, so they shot past it, heading straight for Alice. Chapter 714. Swoosh. Boom. Bang. The wind blades shot past the fire wall and landed on the spot Alice was previously standing. A few meters away from where the attacks landed, Alice could be seen with lightning enveloping her legs. The young lady knew this attack wouldn't be able to deal with Alice, so she prepared a second wave of attack. Wind bows appeared in the air, with arrows notched on them. Each arrow accumulated energy before shooting straight at Alice. There were at least 20 arrows, and all shot at her almost simultaneously. Alice, who had lightning covering her legs, moved swiftly, dodging the attacks she could, while using a large flaming sword to block some of the attacks she was unable to evade. Boom. Bang. The battle slowly started to pick up pace, with both Alice and the young lady attacking ferociously. Being a stage lower didn't put Alice at a disadvantage. Her attack method made it impossible for her to allow her opponent to fully suppress her. Whenever she got an opportunity, she attacked fiercely. The crowd watched the battle animatedly. With other battles ongoing on other platforms, a lot of neutral people were torn between which one they wanted to watch. Only those who had some sort of relationship with one of the participants would focus fully on a particular platform. Her opponent is quite fearsome. Klaus commented on seeing the battle taking place. Yeah, but she's below Alice. Alice's ferocity makes it difficult for people to deal with her. Even when her opponent is a stage ahead of her, she wouldn't be too pressured. Kyle said, "Don't forget she's also smart." Adding that to her list makes her a dangerous opponent. Reynolds said, Gray didn't make any comments on the battle, watching intently. Although it didn't look like it, if things continued in this fashion, Alice might lose. Her opponent was slowly getting the upper hand on a larger scale. Once it got to a particular point, then Alice wouldn't even have the chance to counterattack any longer. Gray wasn't the only one who had noticed this. Most of the advanced people here had also taken note of this. If she uses one of the Seeley's elements, then she should be able to salvage the situation to a certain extent. Void commented, "She would. I feel she's waiting for the perfect time before using it. It would be wasteful to use it so early. What I'm more concerned about is her opponent's hidden card." Gray replied, "Alice definitely isn't the only one who had a trump card. Her opponent would naturally have a hidden card that she would falter once she was in a difficult position. In the case of Reynolds' situation, his opponent was unable to use his hidden card because Reynolds was just too shameless, harassing him without giving him the time to even use it. Bam! A powerful bird made entirely of wind collided with the fireball Alice sent at her opponent. The impact of the explosion pushed her 2 steps back. Her opponent didn't let this chance go, attacking her once again with multiple birds, made of the wind element shooting toward her. Seeing that her situation was getting dire, Alice started brainstorming. She had 2 choices: bring out the Seelie and win, or use 1 or 2 more elements. The former would give her the ability to attack from 2 different locations, while the latter will give her an upgraded arsenal. But everything relied on her. Bringing out the Seelie was the best choice, but she decided against it. Just as the wind birds were about 3 meters away from her, a thick ice wall appeared in front of her. Bang, bang. The wind birds slammed into the ice wall. What happened next shocked most of the audience. The ice, just like the one the group encountered in the mansion, retaliated. This was the special ability of this particular ice. Even after being with the Seelie for some time now, Gray and Klaus had been unable to understand how it worked. Klaus was the most frustrated when he was unable to get it. Ice shards shot toward the young lady. Did the ice just retaliate? A shocked voice from the crowd asked. It seems so, but there's a possibility that she's the one doing this. Someone said, doubt evident in his voice. This was a strange situation, and most of the people here were either on the origin plane or above. They were able to sense it when the ice attacked. The young lady dodged the ice shards, and when everyone thought the attacks would continue, they stopped. The young lady didn't think too much about what just happened and sent out a powerful wind blade, hoping to slice through this thick ice wall. Boom! The wind blade crashed into the ice wall. It managed to cut deep into it. However, it was unable to break through it. The ice wall attacked more aggressively since the attack power it received was stronger than the previous time. Ice shards sprang out from the floor, rushing towards the young lady. She flew into the air with the aid of the wind element, dodging the attack. This time people were able to confirm that Alice wasn't the one doing it. Buzz. Crash. A large lightning bolt struck from the sky, heading straight for the head of the young lady, who was still afloat with the help of the wind element. When she saw the lightning coming her way, she quickly moved to the side to evade the attack. While she was dodging that attack, large fireballs appeared before her. The fireballs shot toward her. The young lady dodged the attacks while also using the wind element to create a tornado that swept Alice into the air. The second Alice realized she was airborne, she quickly covered herself with an ice sphere. After doing this, she started to attack with the lightning element. The young lady tried to use the tornado to send Alice off the stage. Other than defeating your opponent, they could also send them off the stage. Alice noticed this and made sure the young lady didn't get the chance to. A piece of large ice came out from the ice sphere and shot towards the platform. It planted itself on the platform, making it impossible for the tornado to move the ice sphere. The young lady tried to break the ice pillar, but there was no way Alice was going to let her do so. Under her absolute ice defense, she could attack her opponent freely without fear of being attacked. Although the ice couldn't block every attack, it would give her sufficient time to attack and at least gain an advantage over her opponent. They continued fighting in a stalemate. As time went on, people started to notice something strange. Alice was using the ice ability of water elementalists, yet surprisingly, she still hasn't used the water element, not even once. No matter how powerful her ice ability was, she should still be able to use the water element a few times. I hate that ice, Klaus said, his eyes green with envy. Everyone knew the only reason he said this was because he still hadn't been able to gain it. Once he manages to comprehend it, then he wouldn't hate it any longer. It's amazing, given its thickness and overall strength. It should be able to help fight against someone even 2 stages ahead of Alice, Kyle said. Since he wasn't the one fighting against Alice, he had no issues with her special ice. They sparred a few times, and Alice was very calculative on when to bring out this ice. From the small time he had spent with her, he was certain that this battle was already in the bag. 5 more minutes went by, and Alice's attacks had not decreased, instead, it increased exponentially. The young lady was unable to break through her defense, and because of the self-healing and retaliation abilities of the ice, it was almost like a second opponent. Whenever the young lady attacked it, it would retaliate, adding Alice's attack to this made defending hell. She had almost been able to break through the ice sphere 2 times. But unfortunately, Alice has been able to foil her attempts both times. She almost lost in the last attempt. As things stand, she couldn't attack freely because of the special ability of the ice. However, Alice had all the freedom in the world to attack. The young lady had been running around on the platform, trying to dodge Alice's attacks. It's now or never, the young lady muttered as she clapped both hands together. Her aura suddenly started to skyrocket. In the space of 10 seconds, she went from the 6th stage to the 7th stage. I originally wanted to keep this hidden until my next battle, but it would be useless if I don't manage to go to the next round, she said to Alice. The aura of the young lady wasn't the only thing that increased, even her size increased as well. Chapter 715. A secret technique to boost her strength. Gray muttered as he looked at the young lady whose cultivation went up by a stage. Not just her strength, but I feel like there's a difference in the elemental particles revolving around her. It seems like her cultivation stage isn't the only thing that saw an increase, Kyle said. Isn't it obvious? Just take a look at her size, she's massive, Klaus said animatedly. The battle that they previously thought Alice had won seems to be uncertain all of a sudden. The young lady showing her hidden card meant that she was ready to risk it all. Alice looked at the current appearance of her opponent, her gaze unwavering. It was as if she couldn't feel the difference in size and aura. Just the size of the young lady would intimidate most people, but not her. You finally showed your true strength. I thought you were going to hide forever, Alice said, fierce fighting intent showing in her eyes. You forced my hand. I hope you're not disappointed after I defeat you, the young lady said. I wanted to say the same thing. Alice attacked the second she finished speaking. Her ice was still active, and the best time to extinguish the young lady's momentum is now. Since she just used her trump card, she would be extremely confident. Boom, buzz. Lightning bolts and fireballs were sent toward the young lady. Seeing the attacks coming her way, the young lady created a windscreen that blocked the attacks. After being hit by all the attacks simultaneously, it only received a slight crack. After blocking Alice's attacks, she attacked as well. She formed two tornadoes that merged before covering the ice sphere Alice was hiding in. Of the two tornadoes, one was spinning clockwise, while the other was spinning anti-clockwise. Merging the two tornadoes together created something like a grater. With both spinning in different directions, the force would shred anything in its path apart. From the moment the merged tornado covered the ice sphere, cracks started to form across it. Alice was stunned. She couldn't believe this was the same ice sphere that had blocked every single attack that the young lady had sent her way. If the ice sphere fell apart, then she would undoubtedly die from the shredding force of the tornado. Her friends were worried when they saw this. The sudden change was unexpected. This technique is powerful. Using the spinning force of the wind element to create something this terrifying. Looks like I have another technique to learn, Gray thought internally. The strength of this technique was something none of the people here could deny. This was Gray's first time seeing something like this done with the wind element, and he couldn't deny the fact that he was impressed by it. This showed that the number of techniques owned by these people was massive. The young lady wasn't even in a faction, yet she had access to such techniques. Gray was sure that not all wind elementalists would be able to achieve this control over the tornado, given both are going in different directions. It would take immaculate control as well as full focus before they would be able to pull off something like this. Then there's also the aspect of elemental grades. Over time, he had come to know that there are some powerful techniques they can't use without getting to an appropriate level. The young lady used her most powerful skill right off the bat, planning to crush Alice immediately. The question on everybody's heads now for Alice was, what would you do now? Alice had a slightly panicked expression. The ice sphere was breaking faster than it was recovering. This meant that in due time, it would surely fall apart. I guess I have no choice, she thought to herself. It was time to use the full extent of her abilities. Come on out, Alice muttered. A bright light shone on her forehead, and a small figure covered in light rushed out. It passed through the tornado and charged at the young lady. When everyone saw this, they thought it was Alice's last attempt in putting the young lady off. Only a few people above the sage plane looked at the light with an unreal expression. The young lady waved her hand, and a powerful wind blade slashed at the light rushing towards her. To her surprise, the light seemed to phase through the wind blade as it continued rushing toward her. She was stunned and without delay retreated back. On no account could she afford to let this thing close to her. Bang! Her back slammed into an ice wall that was behind her. To her greatest surprise, she didn't even know when this ice wall appeared there. The moment this happened, an intense cold spread out from the ice wall, trying to engulf her. One had to remember that at the time the group saw the Seelie, it was already on the sage plane. It only didn't show its full strength when fighting against the group, because it was still very young. Even at this moment, it wasn't able to use its full strength due to some restrictions. After merging with Alice, its strength was restricted to a certain level, so that the merging process would go on without a hitch. If it didn't do so, then Alice would have been in danger. But even with its restricted strength, it didn't mean that it would have any problems when dealing with someone in the 7th stage or the Overlord plane. With the appearance of the ice wall, the Seelie stopped moving, and everyone in the arena was able to get a good view of it. The second they saw it, gasps of shock spread out. Even the young lady fighting against Alice had a dumbfounded look as she struggled to move away from the ice. A Seelie, a dumbstruck voice came from the audience. This was a shocking revelation by Alice. Never did any of the people who came for the competition think that they would see a Seelie in this event. Even the host factions looked at Alice with shock. Chapter 716. I see why she only used ice and not the water element. She wasn't a water elementalist to begin with, it was from that little fellow. A middle-aged lady from one of the top factions said as she looked at Alice with a smile. This was a surprise for her, nothing more. I never thought someone would actually be able to merge with a Seelie, especially one that is unknown. Another figure spoke from the special area. It's not the first time I'm seeing this or even hearing of it, so I'm not too shocked. Being able to convince a Seelie to merge with her is amazing, to say the least. And this Seelie seems to be on the Sage Plane. A lady from the faction Klaus was eyeing said. If Klaus heard this, he would be kicking himself for being unable to get the Seelie. If he had managed to get it, then he would have gotten an increased chance of being able to convince them that he wanted to join them. After all, he had a cute Seelie with him. Isn't she friends with that young summoner? One of the men in another faction pointed at Reynolds. They didn't see Reynolds as anything special since, even though summoners were rare, only those high-grade summoners had a high appeal to them. I think so. I wonder if the other three plan on participating as well. Someone else said. Gray's group was slowly garnering attention from the top factions. This was exactly what Klaus hoped to happen. With this much attention placed on them, the faction he wanted to join would surely take notice of him. Then once he puts in a mouth-watering performance, he would garner even more hopes of joining them. While all the conversations were going on, the young lady fighting against Alice managed to free herself from the ice that was sealing her. The Seelie attacked, sending out a blizzard. As the blizzard went closer to the young lady, she could feel a frightening sense of danger from it. If she was stuck in this blizzard, then she would undoubtedly fall into peril. She hastily retreated, but to her dismay, she realized retreating any further would mean leaving the platform, which counted as a sign of admitting defeat. Presently, in the few seconds the Seelie was out, only half of the ice sphere had been destroyed. At this pace, if she could manage to hold on for only 30 seconds or so, then she would be the winner. Looking at the blizzard, she steeled her mind and covered herself with a tornado. However, the second the blizzard came in contact with the tornado, it destroyed it, before sending a bone-chilling cold into her body. In a matter of 5 seconds, she had started to suffer from hypothermia. Then within the next 5 seconds, ice had started to form around her body. It was only a matter of a few seconds before she would be turned into a complete ice sculpture. At that time, even a god might not be able to rescue her. Stop the fight, the winner is already known, an aged voice said to the man in charge of the platform. The voice was calm and breezy as if it was moving with the wind. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The man in charge of the platform nodded before stepping into the platform. With his strength being above the Sage Plane, it was a piece of cake for him to stop these attacks. The first person he helped was the young lady. This was obviously the best choice since she was in the most danger. The Seelie wanted to attack, but Alice communicated with it not to. After the man helped stop the blizzard, he turned to Alice. The tornado that was causing so much damage had already started to dwindle in strength. Clearly, the young lady wasn't able to properly fuel it with her elemental essence any longer. The cold from the blizzard must have frozen her elemental essence. Alice stepped out of her protective sphere as she looked at the almost unconscious lady. The Seelie flew back to her side, gazing around curiously. It could see its surroundings while inside Alice, but it wasn't the same as when it was outside. Alice caressed its cheeks while waiting for the man to announce the winner of the battle. The man declared Alice the winner, which came as no surprise to the audience. Alice smiled. She had finally made it to the top 200 and with another card hidden up her sleeves. Although she showed the Seelie, she warned it against using the wind element. This meant that when her opponent would think that they were ready for all her attacks, she would be able to bring out another surprise. Just like Reynolds did, she showed only half of her trump card. After getting back to her seat, the Seelie went back into her body. Congratulations. The group celebrated her victory. They were genuinely worried, even knowing that Alice wasn't really in danger, since if anything happened the man would step in at the last moment. What they were more concerned about was her chances of winning. The second they saw the Seelie, their worries disappeared since they knew she was already victorious. You did a good job. Even though I can't see them, I'm 1000% certain that you've drawn their attention. Klaus laughed happily. It was almost as if he could see the faction taking him without even contemplating it. You really don't need to have such high hopes for that specific faction. Kyle couldn't help but warn. Let him dream. It's not always you get to see him like this. Gray said. All that's needed now is for me to show them my amazing strength. Klaus started plotting his battle in advance. Kyle started to pity whoever would be matched against Klaus. This fellow seemed hellbent on getting into that faction. It would be funny if they actually gave him an opponent in the 9th stage. Kyle thought with a laugh. Chapter 717. Both Alice and Reynolds had qualified for the top 200. This meant they could challenge someone from the faction they wanted to join, or they could attempt to go for the top 10, thereby joining the faction they wished. They both agreed on challenging those in the factions they wanted to join. First off, this would make things easier for them. Fighting too many battles wasn't something they wanted. Alice planned on continuing even after successfully joining a faction. Reynolds was against that idea. Even if he had a good chance of becoming number 1 with his elemental warrior, he didn't want to waste his time. Come on, Ray. It would be fun, Klaus advised. If Alice and Reynolds managed to get into the top 10 even after joining a faction, it would make things even more interesting. This would make them more eye-catching. Don't you think it would be a waste? I mean, once we manage to get into a faction, we'll be opening 2 spots for others. Reynolds voiced his thoughts. Look, if they're powerful, then they would definitely draw the attention of those top factions. Besides, it's stated that becoming part of the top 100 would guarantee a participant a chance of joining a faction. Klaus advised. He's right. The more battles you fight, the stronger you get. You'll naturally learn a thing or two from it. Gray commented. He planned to fight to the very end. If he could get the number 1 spot, then he didn't mind. After the others urged him, he finally agreed. Klaus was very persistent, and he even went as far as threatening him. In Kyle's entire life, this was the first time he was seeing something like this, and to be honest, he found it very funny. Alice and Gray laughed when they saw how Klaus was persuading Reynolds to fight. All Klaus wanted was for their group to shine in this competition. This way, he wouldn't have any issues with joining the faction he wanted. The day soon came to an end, and the top 200 had been verified. Now, it was time for the next round. Fighting for a spot in the top 100 or challenging someone from a faction. Only battle maniacs like Alice would want to do all. The next day, remember, don't disappoint me. Klaus encouraged the duo, before promising to give them a treat once they returned victorious. Alice didn't take it to heart. Reynolds, on the other hand, took interest in it. The reason for this was because Klaus promised to give him a copy of his book, How to Get and Keep a Woman. When Kyle heard of the book, he looked at Klaus, a little surprised that he actually wrote a book. Given Klaus's nature, he didn't think he would be able to do something like this. How come you're single since you know how to get a woman? Kyle asked cheekily. Hanging with him is bad luck. Believe me, once you stay with him for too long, his bad luck will start to rub off on you. Klaus shook his head and started reminiscing about his glorious days. Since he became friends with Gray, it was as if he wasn't able to get a woman, much less keep one. Well, it's not as if he didn't want to, but either he was busy training or traveling. There was no chance to stay in one place, so he had no option but to be alone. But once he gets into the faction he wanted, he would search for a pretty damsel to make his wife. Kyle looked at Gray. The truth was, given Gray's facial appearance, he thought women would be flocking around him. The few days they've been here, he had seen how many ladies had been trying to get Gray's attention. Some even went as far as going straight to the point with him. Klaus had also gotten a few interests, but compared to Gray, he was miles behind. Kyle was relatively handsome, but looking at the faces of Gray and Klaus, he felt a tinge of envy. He hates women, Kyle asked as he moved closer to Klaus. People in general, Klaus replied. His response prompted a chuckle from Kyle. Saying Gray hated people in general seemed a bit too extreme, but from the time he had been with them, he could tell that Gray didn't like socializing with people. Klaus and Reynolds were very social, making tons of friends in the few days they were here. Is there any reason for this? Kyle asked with a whisper. Yes, well, you see, unlike normal people, he wasn't able to awaken his elements when he was 12. Klaus recounted how Gray couldn't awaken any element at 12, then managed to become a multi-elementalist when he finally did. He couldn't tell Kyle that Gray awakened only 2, so he lied that he awakened multiple elements. Hearing the story, Kyle was a little shocked. Although he had heard of a few stories, these type of people were very rare. They tend to be very determined and focused on training. He could already tell from Gray's demeanor that he was that type of person. Being mocked by everyone because he was unable to awaken an element at a young age will naturally make one withdraw from associating with others. No wonder, Kyle said as he looked at Gray. Alice and Reynolds were presently standing on the platform along with the other participants in the top 200. Gray had his full focus on them. An old man flew down from the special seating area. His hair and beards were completely white, and his face was filled with wrinkles. But from his eyes, one could sense a certain power hiding in wait, seemingly waiting to explode out. Congratulations on making it to the top 200. You all already know the rules. But just in case, if anyone uses any forbidden technique, then they would be eliminated. Is that clear? The old man asked as he looked at the group. They all nodded. After saying a few more words of encouragement, he flew back to his seat, so the competition can continue. Chapter 718. After the old man left the arena, the men in charge of the platforms came forward. Whoever wishes to challenge anyone from the faction they desire to join should stay on the platform. The rest can go back to their seats. One of the men said. Most of the people on the platform decided against it. They saw the outcome of those who tried it in the origin plane. Those who were defeated lost their will, and only a few managed to even get into the top 100. In the end, only 8 people were left on the platforms, Alice and Reynolds included. When they saw Alice and Reynolds standing on the platform, a few of the people who they've managed to gain their attention looked on with interest, wondering which faction they would want to join. Since there were 10 platforms present, then all 8 battles could take place simultaneously without any need of waiting. Gray and his friends found it unfortunate, since they wouldn't be able to watch the fight of both their friends. They would have to split their attention, watching one for some time before moving their gaze to the other one. I would like to challenge a member of the Asteroid faction. Alice was the first person amongst the 8 people to state her wish. When the crowd heard this, they chatted animatedly. The Asteroid faction was a powerful lightning faction. It was regarded as the joint strongest lightning faction alongside 4 others in this region. The faction Reynolds wanted to join was also one of them. The audience thought Reynolds would challenge someone from the Asteroid faction as well, since he was a lightning elementalist. Being friends with Alice also meant they would want to join the same faction. The other people on the platform stepped forward to declare the faction they would like to challenge. Reynolds was the last person. I would like to challenge a member of the Raiden faction. The group already knew their choices, so this didn't come as a surprise to them. The audience was however stunned when they realized the duo didn't plan on joining the same faction. They couldn't wrap their heads around why they picked 2 different factions. The factions that had been challenged each sent out a genius to battle the participants. Being a top faction, each member was a powerful genius. The fighters that came out were all in the same stage as the challengers. The factions couldn't afford to send someone a stage above. Reynolds' opponent was a young man in the 4th stage of the Overlord plane just like him. The same for Alice. Her opponent was in the 5th stage of the Overlord plane, just like her. These people were people who wouldn't have any problems with challenging those a stage above them, or even 2 stages above them. All the platforms were occupied, and after getting confirmation from both fighters of each platform, the battle began. Buzz. Bang. Reynolds' opponent attacked with a powerful lightning attack. Small butterflies made of lightning flew toward Reynolds. Their numbers were massive. Reynolds created a large lightning sword that he used to counter the attack, causing an explosion. After that attack, his opponent didn't stop there. Rather, he took a step forward, and when his foot touched the ground, a large symbol appeared on the ground. It was in the shape of a 4-leaf clover. Lightning started to dance around the platform, and lightning arrows accumulated. With a wave of his hands, the lightning arrows shot toward Reynolds. The strength of the attack was something that shocked Reynolds. He originally thought he might have a fighting chance against this person, since they were in the same stage, but the reality was different. As the fight went on, he was pushed back even more. The young man's attacks were consistent. Reynolds has been able to counterattack a few times, but the skill level of the young man was on another level. It was easy to see that the young man had an advantage when it came to techniques. Most of Reynolds' attacks were normal attacks almost every lightning elementalist could use. The young man used one of the special attacks of the Raiden faction. A circle made entirely of 4-leaf clovers appeared behind him, and powerful lightning attacks shot out from it. Unlike normal lightning, there was a certain difference in this one. It was as if a certain hint of darkness was within. This was a skill that could draw a bit of the darkness particles in the air to aid the destructiveness of the lightning attack. This skill was best suited for dual elementalists, who had both the lightning and the darkness element, since they could use it to its fullest. When Gray saw the attack, he was astounded. This was like merging two elements together. It might be different from his own, but it was almost the same thing. The only difference was that even an elementalist who doesn't have the darkness element could use it, since the technique could will the darkness element on its own. The creator of this technique is a freak, Gray concluded. This was something he didn't think was possible for others. However, he could see it right in front of him. Reynolds, seeing the lightning attack coming toward him, knew that if he tried to block this attack as he had done with the previous ones, then he would lose. He clapped both hands together to create a tense atmosphere, and from his expression, everyone knew he was about to call out his summon. The expression of everyone, however, changed when they saw a humanoid figure made out of lightning appearing. When Reynolds's elemental warrior appeared, it raised its sword, faced the lightning coming its way fearlessly, and charged forward. Its speed was well above that of a normal 7th stage Overlord plane elementalist. All everyone saw was a lightning figure rushing through the platform, and the special attack of the Raiden faction was successfully blocked. An elemental warrior. So you're a high-grade summoner after all, the young man commented when he saw this. Chapter 719. The appearance of Reynolds's elemental warrior came as a shock to the young man he was fighting, as well as most of the people watching his battle. They never thought he was actually a high-grade summoner, but pretended to be a low-grade summoner. It was all for this moment, trick everyone into believing you're weak before showing them your true strength. Although it might be regarded as an underhanded tactic by some people, it was actually a very well thought out plan for those at the top. It was common knowledge to never let your enemies know your full strength before a fight. Discussions broke out in the camp of the Raiden faction. There were a few students who thought Reynolds was a shameless individual because of this move. However, all the older students, as well as the elders of the faction, knew that individuals like Reynolds would be able to live long in a world like this. Presently, they even felt maybe this wasn't his entire strength. It was easy to assume since he waited this long. Congratulations on acquiring a good candidate, an elder from the Asteroid faction said to one of the elders of the Raiden faction. The battle isn't over yet. It's undecided if he'll be able to win or not. The elder replied, if he loses, can we have him? An elder from one of the other top lightning factions said with a blank expression, it will be up to him. The elder from the Raiden faction replied. His voice didn't have any changes, but the other factions knew there was no way the Raiden faction would let go of such a good budding talent. Reynolds also seemed to be very sensible and talented, so it was not a mistake to say he would grow by leaps and bounds once he joins a powerful faction. Your camp also seems to have acquired a good talent as well, the elder from the Raiden faction said as he looked at Alice's platform. She's not that bad, the elder from the Asteroid faction replied. While their conversations were ongoing, the battles didn't stop. The intensity increased, with Reynolds bringing out his elemental warrior. It meant that he was finally going all out, to the joy of Klaus. Yes, Ray, show him what you got, Klaus yelled from the side. Kyle smiled when he saw this. Gray had zero change in his expression. These factions have a lot of powerful techniques. It wouldn't be bad if I were able to learn a thing or two from them, he thought to himself, pretending to be a sheep when you're actually a wolf. Nice move. The young man fighting against Reynolds complimented him with a thumbs up. Thank you. But this is just the beginning, Reynolds said before rushing ahead with the elemental warrior. There was no time to waste, he had to take out his opponent as soon as possible. The young man's expression turned serious as he attacked Reynolds. Multiple lightning lotuses came out from the ground. It was an attack he had been accumulating since he created the symbol of the lotus on the ground. It was made especially for the sake of Reynolds's summon. Buzz, boom, bang. The lotuses exploded upon contact. Nevertheless, none of them were able to make contact with the elemental warrior, due to its superior speed. A streak of lightning moved quickly through the platform, and attacks flew in all directions. Reynolds also turned into a streak of lightning, charging at the young man. Seeing this, The young man didn't shy away and also turned into a streak of lightning. Lightning elementalists were all known for their speed and destructive power. This was a showdown of who was faster and who had better destructive power. The battle excited a lot of people, especially lightning elementalists, since a few of them were able to get a thing or two from the fight. Boom, bang, bam. They continued exchanging blows, and lightning bolts would occasionally drop from the sky. Reynolds had used the special technique lightning rain, while the young man used another special technique that created what seemed like an eye made entirely of lightning. This eye attacks at an extreme speed. Even the elemental warrior found it difficult dodging them. The young man showed brilliant skills that would dazzle any person fighting against him. But in the end, he came up short against Reynolds and his elemental warrior. The difference in strength between the duo wasn't much. What gave the young man the advantage from the start was his higher skill set. In a battle of equals, the quality of your techniques matters a lot. Take for instance, Gray's space technique, the Great Void technique. It was a skill that even those in the Aurora continent found hard to counter due to its spontaneousness. It was almost impossible to defend against, and once you start to show a slight crack in your thoughts because of it, you're as good as defeated. This was one of the skills that have helped Gray in cases of fighting against multiple opponents. He would use this to make the others wary of him before attacking freely. Buzz. Crash. Once Reynolds took the upper hand, he didn't let it slip up. The young man was hard-pressed in dealing with the duo, and Reynolds was as before, shameless with his tactics. With the elemental warrior in his front, he made life a living hell for his opponent. It took him over 7 minutes before he was able to send the young man flying. Although the young man was beaten, he put up a great fight which showed the immense strength of the Raiden faction. Losing didn't make him weak, it only showed that his opponent was a notch ahead of him. Boom, bang. He was finally sent out of the platform, and Reynolds and his elemental warrior stood victoriously on the platform, their opponent defeated. With this victory, Reynolds had officially become a member of the Raiden faction, one of the top lightning factions in this region. This was something to be proud of, and he truly did raise his head up high. Chapter 720. I never thought I would battle someone who has merged with a Seelie. The young man standing opposite Alice said, "If I may." Alice didn't have the time for a conversation, she came here for a battle. The man in charge of their platform had already announced the start of the battle, and she was ready to fight. The young man didn't take Alice's lack to engage in a conversation with him to be anything disrespectful. He nodded to her question and prepared himself for the battle. Alice attacked with the lightning element, sending out a bolt of lightning. The young man stood straight, and just when the attack was about to hit him, his figure vanished, appearing some distance away from Alice before attacking with a powerful lightning strike. Boom. The attack hit the ice wall that sprang out of the ground in front of Alice. A dual elementalist, and he has the space element as well. She frowned when she saw this. The young man the faction sent out was a dual elementalist. Well, so the thought from the first attack he made. This would make things difficult for her. Space elementalists are known to be terrible opponents to fight against, and it was most likely the plan of the faction to send someone like him here, so he could counter the Seelie's advantage. The young man smiled when he saw that his attack didn't pass through. Instead, the ice wall countered him as expected. He dodged the attack quite easily, before attacking Alice once again. Alice looked at her opponent and knew that she had to go all out from the get-go. Luckily for her, she had been sparring with Gray and Void for a while now, so she had a fair share of experience when it came to tackling space elementalists. The first thing was to ensure she didn't give him the chance to build his momentum. Swoosh, bang, boom. The Seelie rushed out and attacked. This time, its speed was higher than before. It was using the wind element to boost itself as it attacked with the ice element. Alice was aiding it from behind as well. With both the wind and lightning elements combined, the speed of the Seelie increased exponentially. The young man was slightly taken aback when he saw how Alice attacked. It was almost as if she wasn't wary of him being able to appear wherever he wanted on the platform. He dodged the attack coming his way and countered. His counter was blocked by the ice wall, and he had to move in another direction to escape from the retaliation of the ice wall. While he appeared in a new location, he was met with an attack from the Seelie, which seemed to have been able to pinpoint where he would come out from the void. He didn't feel pressured by this. With a calm expression, he blocked the attack. Since he was weaker than the Seelie, he naturally was forced a few steps back. Alice attacked at this moment as well. The young man blinked and appeared on the side. He moved his hand in a slashing motion, and to the shock of Alice, a powerful attack appeared from nowhere, and her ice wall, which was almost impenetrable, was slashed in two. Gray, who was watching, almost stood on his feet when he saw this attack. It was a space element attack. The young man just slashed the space where the ice wall was located. If not for the ice wall, Alice might have not been able to dodge such a fatal attack. Of course, this attack had a flaw. The opponent could predict where it was going from the direction of the young man's hand, and act accordingly. Alice sensed the shocking power behind the previous attack of the young man, and even though she was confident in being able to dodge it, she honestly didn't want something like that to get close to her. The Seelie tried to fix the ice wall while attacking the young man once again. Alice also joined in on the attack as well. The synergy between Alice and the Seelie was top-notch, so it made things hard for the young man. Alice didn't want to give him the chance to use that attack any longer, but she also placed it in the back of her head that she had to prepare for any unforeseen events. Space elementalists want people to be taken lightly, especially those that have an array of powerful techniques on their hands. Boom, bam, bang. The fight continued intensely. The audience was watching the battle with all seriousness. You really sent him out. How evil. An old man from one of the top lightning factions said to the elder of the asteroid faction. Of course, he's the only one who can deal with the Seelie easily. And as you can see, even he isn't having an easy time. The elder from the asteroid faction replied. What do you think of the girl? Another elder from the asteroid faction asked. Honestly, not bad. She lacks powerful techniques, that's all. It's the same with her friend there. He might be powerful, but it's obvious he lacks a technique on a faction's level. The elder said as he glanced at Reynolds' battle with the young man. They will grow to be powerful figures in the years to come. An old voice muttered. Gray and Klaus were torn between which battle to focus on. They had been moving their heads left and right since both battles began. When they first realized that Alice's opponent was a space elementalist, they were surprised. But before they could even watch the battle for a minute, something would happen on the other platform that would draw their attention away. Damn, I wish I had 2 extra eyes, Klaus said while rubbing his neck, which he felt had started to ache from moving from side to side too often in such a short time. Me too, Gray said. Kyle was the only one who focused more on Alice's battle. He would occasionally take a glance at Reynolds' battle as well. Chapter 721. Her opponent isn't going to go down easily, Klaus commented as he watched Alice's battle. Well, does it matter? He'll lose in the end, Gray stated. No matter how long it took, the result was the most important thing. This is one of the reasons people do whatever they can to get the results they want. Nobody would ask how they did. All people found interest in was the result. I agree with you. Winning here would make her a member of the asteroid faction. Once she gets there, her strength is bound to increase, especially if she manages to make enough contributions and enters one of those realms. Kyle complied with Gray's reasoning. The battle on the platform raged on. Alice was an aggressive attacker, while the young man was a calm defender. Seeing that his space element was only able to stump Alice the first time, he didn't rush into making decisions. Fighting against someone like Alice, a single slip-up would be detrimental to him, since Alice would most likely take full advantage of it. Boom, bang, lightning attacks raged on, accompanied with fire, ice, and wind. I never thought this little fellow had the wind element as well. She did well to hide it from everyone the first time, the young man complained internally, although he was astounded by the fact that this was a dual elemental Seelie. This wasn't the best time to marvel at it. If he manages to survive first, then he would speak about it. The audience had already taken note of the Seelie, and the crowd was shaken. Getting a Seelie was already extremely difficult given their rarity. But not only did Alice manage to get and merge with one, but it was also a dual elemental Seelie. Her luck was insane. They looked at Reynolds, who had already called out his elemental warrior, and then at Alice, whose Seelie had 2 elements, and sighed in depression. It was like they got all the blessings in the world. Everyone knew they were friends, which made them even more envious. How could 2 friends be freaks? They couldn't help but take a peek at the trio sitting in the crowd. Whenever Alice and Reynolds finished fighting, they would sit with those 3. Is it possible that they were also freaks as well? This was the question going through the head of the crowd. Having someone like Alice or Reynolds in a friend circle, could already be counted as a blessing. Having both was luck, but if there was someone else special among their group, then they were an impressive bunch. If Klaus knew what people were thinking, he would be joyous. He wouldn't mind answering most of their questions as well. Alas, it was impossible. Buzz, crash, bang. The young man managed to dodge a lightning bolt by a hair's breadth, but he was met with a wind blade that he was forced to block with his lightning element. Alice continued her attacks, while the young man occasionally countered. There were a few times when he managed to get a chance to unleash a powerful strike which put Alice off, giving him the chance to get a small advantage for a short while. Just like Reynolds, Alice relied on the Seelie to suppress her opponent. It was only a matter of time before she took back the initiative. The young man was hard-pressed to fight against her. Before long, thud, he fell on one knee, breathing heavily. Alice had literally been attacking him for over 5 minutes straight, without giving him any chance to catch his breath. His entire clothes were soaked with sweat. "I admit defeat," he said while taking long breaths. There was no use in fighting anymore. He knew his faction was satisfied with his and Alice's performance. Even if they weren't, he couldn't continue any longer. When he was sent forward, it was without the knowledge of Alice's Seelie having the wind element. This disrupted their plan because the speed of the Seelie was astonishing. Alice also used her lightning element to boost it as well, making things difficult for the young man. After the young man admitted defeat, Alice stopped attacking. "Thank you for letting me win," she said with a smile. "How I wish I did," the young man replied with a self-deprecating chuckle. He wasn't sad that he lost. It was normal in the life of geniuses to lose. From every loss, he had learned a lesson that has helped him grow stronger. This was why he didn't take a loss to be something detrimental to himself. The young man left the platform, and Alice was declared the winner. She looked around, feeling slightly proud of her achievement. It was not an easy feat, but she managed to defeat someone who had far superior battle techniques. Alice was the first person to end her battle, and looking to the side, she realized Reynolds had already started assaulting his opponent with the aid of his elemental warrior. It was only a matter of time before he achieved victory as well. On the other 6 platforms, only 2 people seemed to have the chance of obtaining victory from how the current battle looked. But Alice knew not to come to a conclusion so soon, since a simple thing could change the outcome of a battle. She walked back to her seat with multiple eyes fixated on her. Making it into one of the strongest lightning factions meant that she just acquired a powerful backer. If manages to show exceptional talent, then it would be difficult for anyone to come close to her. A few people around Gray and his friend's seat started to throw smiles their way, hoping to create a good impression and maybe become friends. Gray had zero interest in these petty people who only came close to you because of success. This was one of the reasons he didn't like people to begin with. They would celebrate with you, but they would never be around to help you weather your storms. It was human nature. Chapter 722. Some minutes later, Reynolds won his battle as well, becoming a member of the faction he picked. Surprisingly, Gray was the first to come here. However, from how things were progressing, his friends would join a faction before he did. Nice performance. Klaus gave the duo a thumbs up before they sat down. "We only wanted to ensure that we became members of a faction. We didn't do it for you," Reynolds said. "It doesn't matter. At least now we have all the attention in this place. What's next is for you two to go out there and claim the 1st and 2nd place. This would make us even more dominant," Klaus urged. "I plan to," Alice said with confidence. "You'll have to go through me." Hehe, Reynolds chuckled cheekily. "I've always wanted to see the strength of your elemental warrior. It seems the time has finally come," Alice replied. Kyle looked at the duo speaking confident, and if not for something, he would have thought there were no other participants here. These two were speaking like they already had the 1st and 2nd place in the bag. All they had to do was to battle it out, and see who would come out on top. While the group was discussing, a young lady, accompanied by a young man, walked up to them. The young lady was dressed in a purple dress, and on her back was a golden lightning insignia. It was none other than the symbol of the Asteroid faction. The young man was dressed in blue, and on his back was a purple lightning insignia shaped like a human wearing a hat. This was the symbol of the Raiden faction. "Welcome to the Asteroid faction. I was told to come and invite you over to your new seat," the young lady said to Alice with a friendly smile. The young man on the side did the same to Reynolds. The only difference was the change in name of the faction. Can we stay here a little longer? We plan to continue the contest, Alice said calmly. The young lady was quite friendly, so she spoke to her in a friendly manner as well. These factions are very smart. They know the people they send out to receive people. Sending out a haughty person will ruin the image of the faction, but sending out a person who was too friendly would make them seem desperate. I see. But a word of reminder, you're now part of the Asteroid faction. Don't disappoint our name. The young lady replied. The meaning of her words was simple. If you know you're going to continue the competition, then you better come out with an exceptional rank. In fact, they expected her to win the competition. The same thing went for Reynolds. Since he was staying, then he had to make sure he won it as well, or at the very least is part of the top 3. Don't worry, I wouldn't give others the chance to look down on us. Alice reassured the young lady before she went back to her seat. Reynolds also reassured the young man from the Raiden faction as well. They didn't plan to go for the top 10 anyway. Their objective was to get first and second. You two are now part of a big faction. All that's left now is for me to join the Moonlight faction, and we'll be alright, Klaus said. What about Gray? Reynolds asked. What about him? Klaus asked in confusion. He still hasn't thought of joining any of them, Reynolds asked. He has other plans. Klaus shook his head in pity. It would have been nice if they were all in the same region. While the duo was having this conversation, Gray, Alice, and Kyle were looking at the duo, all taken aback. The reason for this was because Gray was sitting right in front of the duo, yet they were speaking as if he wasn't. Gray's eyelids twitched as he looked at them. He couldn't even bring himself to ask if they were normal, because the answer was easy for all of them, they weren't. 30 minutes later, the other battles stopped. Of all 8 people that challenged members of a faction, 4 people won. This was the highest number since the start of the competition. Half of the people who challenged a member of their desired faction won. Alice and Reynolds used the time the other battles were still ongoing to try to recover some strength. The other 2 people who qualified didn't continue the competition, since their aim had been achieved. This removed 2 people from the list of participants, leaving a total of 198 people. If they battled with the usual method, they would be short of 1 participant. The hosts decided to make the strongest loser the last person who would make up the top 100. This meant that of the other 99 people who would lose, 1 of them would be given the chance to advance as long as they showed sufficient strength. When the crowd saw Alice and Reynolds were part of the participants fighting, they were excited. How would the new members of these powerful lightning factions fare? There are a few people who might be able to give them some trouble, but the duo had the highest chance of grabbing the number 1 and 2 spots, since their victory over the members of the factions was very convincing. Just like before, they would draw lots for their battles. Alice's opponent was a fire elementalist in the 5th stage, while Reynolds' opponent was a dual elementalist in the 6th stage. It was the duo's turn to fight. They didn't hide their strength like they had been doing all this while. Showcasing their full strength, they crushed their opponents in a swift battle. Their opponents were quite unfortunate since they couldn't grab the last spot. They weren't even able to put up much of a fight against the duo. The young lady who fought against Alice during the first round of the competition was dumbfounded. She didn't think this was the same person who could barely keep up with her. If they were to have a rematch now, Alice would most definitely defeat her. Chapter 723. The top 100 was decided later that day. With all the battles completed, it was time for them to draw lots once again in preparation for the next day. Alice and Reynolds got opponents in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. Their opponents wore long expressions when they found out who they had to fight in the next round. From the start, the battle was as good as lost. They were not opponents who could fight against the two. Reynolds' opponent even thought of giving up instantly. He had seen the method Reynolds used in fighting, and to be honest, he didn't want to be subject to such torture. Yes, he felt it was torture. Alice's opponent was even more disheartened. Alice wasn't someone who went easy on people. She gave them a complete trouncing even when they were weaker than her. Alice and Reynolds were already favorites to grab the top spots. Time went by and the next day came. Getting to the arena, it was packed. Compared to the previous day, the number of people seemed to have increased. It was expected, since as the day goes by, more people flock to the city just because of this competition. There are a few who wanted to participate in it, but due to some unforeseen events, they didn't make it in time. All they could do now was to watch those fighting. You two have become famous, Klaus said as they walked into the arena. The previous night, he went out with Reynolds, and he was shocked by the number of people that wanted to help them because of him. Reynolds was already part of a powerful faction, so many people wouldn't want to offend him. Although he hadn't officially joined them, he was already regarded as one of them. In the tavern they went to the previous night, they were given free drinks and food, which was kind of unexpected. But Klaus didn't mind and gobbled down everything. He even took some back home for Gray, Alice, and Kyle, who refused to go out with them. Alice shrugged, not bothered with it. Reynolds, on the other hand, smiled sheepishly. Klaus poured cold water on Reynolds's mood with his next words. "Don't let it get to your head, focus on getting a good position." Gray chuckled when he heard this. "What do you plan to do once we've all successfully joined a faction?" Klaus asked. "I'll travel to the next region, maybe that would be the place for me," Gray replied. "And what if you don't like that place as well?" Klaus asked. "You'll keep traveling." "I didn't think about it that way, but I don't think so. There would definitely be a place for me there. If not, I'll just come back and join a faction here," Gray replied after falling silent for a while. "All right, I believe you know what you're doing," Klaus said as they took their seats. The group waited for the start of the battles. Alice and Reynolds's battles were the shortest ones so far. In the space of 30 seconds, their opponents gave up. It's not that they didn't want to show some effort, but they were outright beaten out of the platform. Even they had a baffled look on their face when they realized they had lost. They knew they would lose from the start, but never did they think they wouldn't be able to even put up a fight. This was a disgrace for them, even though they were guaranteed a chance to join a faction. Since they managed to get into the top 100, this battle would reduce their ratings in the eyes of the top factions. Now, only the weaker ones would take them in, and it might be unwilling, since they couldn't let the duo not join a faction after promising the top 100 a spot. "You two are just evil," Kyle said as the duo came back. "It's not my fault." He had already given up before the battle started. Alice sat down to look at the other battles taking place in the arena. Just like Alice's opponent, Reynolds' opponent also gave up when he saw the lot the previous day, so defeating him was too easy. After 2 hours, the top 50 spots were occupied. Now, it was time for the battle of the top 25. Of all the fighters left, one person had shocked the entire arena. It was none other than the best loser from the top 100 battles. She was an Earth Elementalist in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. She lost by a small margin, and after careful deliberation by the hosts, they gave her the last spot. Her last battle was against a dual Elementalist in the 6th stage, which she won convincingly. From not being able to make it into the top 100 on her own, she fought her way into the top 50. It was quite a remarkable thing. Since there was still time, the battle for the top 25 would take place the next day. The participants were given 2 hours to recover their strength before they came out to draw lots once again. Alice's opponent was ironically the young lady she fought against during the brawl. Reynolds's opponent is said to be one of the favorites to get into the top 10 by a lot of people here. From her previous battles, everyone could tell that she was well ahead of others at the same stage. If she were to challenge someone from the faction she wished to join, her chances of winning were at least 40%. Take care while fighting against her. Her darkness element is not something you should take lightly, Gray warned. Unlike his friends, he had been watching most of the battles, carefully picking out the top participants. One of the reasons he was doing this was to learn a thing or two from them, while the other was to warn his friends in case they encountered them. "All right," Reynolds nodded. Chapter 724. Alice was the first among the duo to step forward. "It's nice seeing you again," she said to the young lady. "Yeah, not really for me." The young lady shook her head with a self-deprecating smile. She knew she was no match for Alice, but it didn't mean she would give up before the battle even started. Alice didn't reply since she knew what her opponent was thinking. After getting confirmation from both participants, the man in charge gave them the go-ahead to start the battle. "Use your full strength," the young lady said after the man called for the start of the battle. "I plan to," Alice said as the Seelie came out of her, floating by her side. "Thank you," the young lady said before attacking. The attack was met with Alice's attack. While Alice blocked the attack, the Seelie attacked. The young lady instantly fell on the defensive, blocking the attacks of the Seelie, while making sure to be wary of Alice, who was also attacking from the side. They exchanged blows for some time with Alice being on top from the start of the battle. Unlike her previous opponent, The young lady didn't give up, even after being in a passive situation since the start of the battle. She still tried to come up with a way to block and counter Alice and the Seelie. Things got worse for her when the Seelie made a defensive ice wall in front of Alice. All her attacks made the ice retaliate, while she also had to block off Alice and the Seelie's attacks as well. With a three-pronged attack, it was only a matter of time before she started to get hit by the attacks. The young lady managed to hang on in this state for almost 5 minutes. But in the end, she was sent flying out of the platform after Alice saw an opening. "Thank you for going all out this time," the young lady said to Alice before walking away. Alice nodded at her before walking back to her seat after being declared the winner. She has made it to the top 25, a few more battles, and she'll be in the top 10. The group already expected her to win, but they still congratulated her when she came back to her seat. With her battle over, it was time for Reynolds to step into the platform. His opponent was a young lady who others felt had a great chance of making it to the top 10. Remember, don't get dragged into a close-range battle. Also, be mindful of the platform, Gray advised. "Don't worry, I'll be fine. With my elemental warrior, I will be able to keep a good distance away from her, and I'll observe the platform carefully." Reynolds nodded. "All right," Gray said before moving his gaze to the seat of the young lady. He saw her looking in their direction, and their eyes clashed. She moved her gaze away after only a second. Reynolds walked up to the platform, waiting for his opponent. The young lady stepped in a few seconds after he entered. "Hello," Reynolds waved. "Ho." The young lady's voice was cold, just like her expression. Reynolds originally wanted to start a conversation to lighten up the mood, since the young lady was acting as if they were in a life and death battle. But the man in charge of their platform didn't have the time to wait. After confirming that the duo was ready, he called for the start of the battle. The young lady was a multi-elementalist, having the lightning, wind, and darkness elements. The element she seems to be proficient in was the darkness element. When the battle started, she raised her hands and a small black orb made of black mass floated into the air. When it got to around 15 meters into the air, it exploded and spread out little particles of dark matter across the entire platform. There was no way anyone on the platform would be able to dodge it. When Reynolds saw this, he covered his body with a lightning coat. He listened closely to Gray's warnings, so he couldn't afford to let these things touch him. The young lady didn't bother herself about this as she used another attack. A large lightning bolt shot toward Reynolds, but it was blocked by a figure made of lightning. The elemental warrior attacked after it blocked the lightning bolt. The young lady used the wind element to boost her speed as she moved to the left swiftly, dodging the attack of the elemental warrior. Reynolds didn't give her a chance to rest, attacking her the second she stopped moving. The young lady blocked the attack with a windscreen, before sending out multiple wind blades. After sending out the wind blades, she made a bird made entirely of the darkness element, and used the wind element to quicken its speed as it shot at Reynolds. Reynolds let the elemental warrior deal with the darkness bird, while he blocked the wind blades. Boom, bang, bam. The battle was just as the audience expected, thrilling right from the start. "Why did she do that?" Klaus asked curiously. The darkness elemental particles in the platform was still too much. "She's making the place more conducive for the darkness element while trying to weaken the elemental essence of the other elements," Void explained. Of the group, he had the highest sensitivity, so he could sense what was happening around the platform better than the others. The longer the battle drags on, the greater her advantage. Gray added, "Wouldn't that mean she might be able to defeat Trey?" Klaus asked. "Not entirely, but her chances will be higher then. Reynolds will soon notice this, and would try to end the battle quickly. If he gets close to her, then she would be able to do even more damage." Gray replied, "She's powerful." Alice's gaze turned serious. "And clever. If she had waited any longer before using the attack she first used, Reynolds would have been able to stop it," Kyle said. Chapter 725. Boom, bam, bang. Reynolds and the young lady continued their heated battle. As time went on, Reynolds started to notice a peculiarity. He was having difficulties with his lightning element. Not just him, but even the strength of the elemental warrior seemed to have waned a little compared to the first time he summoned it. "It must be these particles. I'll need to end the battle sooner than I thought," he thought to himself. Once he gets to a certain point, then no matter how powerful he or his elemental warrior was, they would ultimately be defeated, since their strength would have reduced to the level where it wouldn't be able to threaten the young lady. Reynolds rushed forward using the attack, Lightning Rain. With the Lightning Rain attacking a wide area, the elemental warrior moved closer to the young lady. Although Reynolds was in a haste, he didn't forget Gray's warning about getting close to the young lady. After Gray warned him about her, he only planned on letting his elemental warrior get close to her, while he would attack from a distance. The young lady used the lightning and wind element to boost her speed, as she hurriedly retreated from the elemental warrior. She couldn't afford to fight a close-range battle with it, since it was not human. Her darkness element might be able to affect it, but it wouldn't be on the same level as humans. Besides, the elemental warrior was a stage above her, making it even more difficult to deal with. The elemental warrior didn't let her leave easily as it chased after her and attacked her. The young lady blocked as she retreated. Reynolds used the opportunity to continue his assault. This was his usual strategy, letting the elemental warrior be in front while he attacked from behind. It might be underhanded for some people, but the elemental warrior was part of his strength, so he didn't really have to think about what they said. The young lady tried countering, but the elemental warrior blocked every possible chance of that happening. If not for its strength reduction, it wouldn't have any problems with defeating the young lady. Everyone soon started to notice what was taking place on the platform. Even those in the origin plane noticed the drop in strength of the elemental warrior. That was not the only thing that changed. The darkness elemental attacks of the young lady saw a spike, increasing to a new level. This was the longest battle she had fought so far, so they haven't been able to see this part of her strength. Gasps of shock resonated across the arena as they started to realize what was happening. Reynolds was on the verge of losing. Presently, his elemental warrior could barely suppress the young lady. Reynolds was also having a difficult time manipulating his element. The darkness element had corroded the air, destroying any elemental essence that wasn't the darkness element. The lightning coat Reynolds used in enveloping his body started to flicker, a sign that it would be fading away anytime soon. Ray is in trouble, Alice said with a severe expression. This was the first time any of them had been caught in such a difficult predicament. Since they were battling in the competition, Reynolds' opponent was not someone to be taken lightly, and they're seeing her in a different state. Just like Reynolds, this was the young lady's most powerful opponent so far, and she planned to take him out. If she eliminated Reynolds, then she would solidify her position as being one of the favorites to win. Not just that, but whichever faction she joined, she would be able to get a good reputation before even joining. Yeah, this is troublesome. Unless Ray leaves the platform, it would be difficult for him to use the lightning element to its full strength, Gray said with a shake of the head. But he didn't lose hope in his friend's chance of winning. He knew Reynolds would not give up so easily. Only when he knew there was no hope would he give up. But in this situation, he still had a chance of turning it around. He won't lose, Klaus said confidently. I know, Gray and Alice replied. Kyle looked at the trio amazed. Reynolds was clearly on the verge of losing, yet these three were saying so confidently that he won't lose. Could it be that they're not seeing the current condition of the battle? This was the question he wanted to ask, but he refrained from doing so, since he didn't want to offend them. Since they were so confident in their friend, he wanted to see the reason for their confidence. Reynolds watched as the battle slowly started to get out of his hands. From having the initiative, he fell into a passive state. Luckily, the elemental warrior was able to take most of the pressure. The young lady was no doubt very powerful. One has to know that fighting against Reynolds and his elemental warrior was almost the same as fighting against two people, one in the 7th stage of the Overlord plane while the other in the 4th stage, yet she was able to gain the upper hand. This might not be the result if she fought two people at this stage, but since Reynolds was the only one operating both sides, it meant she was fighting against one brain. Boom, bang, bam, a €0 exclamation point trademark T. She attacked ferociously with the lightning and wind element. The darkness element was mainly used for sneak attacks. Boom. One of the attacks hit Reynolds head on, and he was sent flying. He maneuvered and managed to stay on the platform, but his lightning coat was eroded. It flickered once and went off. With the lightning coat out of the picture, he was standing unprotected against the darkness particles that were on the platform. Within a matter of a few seconds, he started to feel the effects of them as they touched his body. If he had about 70% control over the lightning element before present, he had only around 50%. And as time goes on, he would continue losing his ability to manipulate it. Chapter 726. Crash. Bang. Reynolds was sent flying by another attack from the young lady once again, this time crashing into his elemental warrior. The light the elemental warrior gave was weaker than usual. This showed it would disappear soon. Just give up. The longer you stay here, the more you'll lose your strength. Unless you're a darkness elementalist, you're as good as defeated in here, the young lady said calmly. She wasn't haughty, only speaking what she felt was the truth. Reynolds raised his head to look at her. This wasn't the first time he was getting in a situation like this, and time again, he had been able to come out victorious. All he had to do was persevere for now. His chance would come sooner or later. You've not won, not yet, Reynolds replied as he stood up once again. He could feel his strength slowly leaving his body. This wasn't how he planned things to go, but he was also aware things don't always go as planned. This was why there was a contingency plan. I've never heard of anyone doing this before, but it should be possible, Reynolds thought to himself as he prepared himself for what was next. The young lady snorted and attacked once again. Reynolds sent the elemental warrior forward to fight against the young lady, as he mapped out his plan in his head. If things work well, he would create a unique technique never before seen. If not, then he would lose without a doubt, and might be harmed in that process as well. Boom, bam, bang. The elemental warrior was once again sent flying, this time in Reynolds' direction. Reynolds, seeing the elemental warrior coming his way, dodged to the left. Given the speed it was coming at, it was unknown if it wouldn't knock him out of the platform, so he couldn't take any chances. He knew this would present a chance for the young lady to attack him, but he had no other options. Just as he predicted, after dodging the attack, he saw the young lady approaching him with a dark orb in her hands. She created a tornado which she used to keep Reynolds in place as she approached. Reynolds used the lightning element to the maximum, but because of the decrease in the lightning elemental essence on the platform, he was unable to bring forth 70% of his original strength. The reason the young lady preferred close-range battle was all because of the speed of the darkness element. It was just too slow. She could boost its speed with the wind or lightning element, but due to the specialty of her attacks, it wouldn't be as powerful as when used alone. This was a strange method, since getting a boost from other elements would usually increase the speed and even the attack power of the element. Reynolds struggled as the young lady got within striking distance. Buzz. Crash. Bang. The young lady dodged to the right with a smirk on her face. I expected that, she chuckled before throwing the dark orb into the tornado. Reynolds watched on as the dark orb got into the tornado and exploded. The tornado soon turned completely black, and Reynolds' figure disappeared from view. The young lady stood alone on the platform, looking at the black tornado rotating on the platform. Everyone watched the tornado, waiting for her to stop it, or for Reynolds to somehow miraculously escape from it. They knew the chance of the latter was very minimal, but people enjoyed seeing the unexpected. Gray and his friends exchanged views, while Kyle shook his head. He already knew this would be the result from the second the young lady took the upper hand. Ray is not defeated yet. Klaus clenched his fist. You should just for. Kyle was in the middle of speaking when Gray interrupted him. He has not given up yet. We'll only accept his defeat when he has accepted it. Gray pointed at the black tornado, and signs of silver light were visible in the tornado. Although very faint, it was visible. Gray wasn't the only one who noticed the silver lights. People gradually started to notice them around the arena, and they started pointing at them while speaking animatedly. Some felt it was a last-ditch effort from Reynolds, while others felt Reynolds was about to do the impossible. The silver lights started to move faster and started getting brighter. In the dark tornado, the lights started to shine brightly. The young lady seeing this raised her hand and a second darkness orb appeared on it. She sent it into the tornado. With a second orb entering, the strength of the tornado almost multiplied. The silver lights which were running rampant a few moments ago, slowly started to lose their light. At this point, other than Gray and his friends, no one else felt Reynolds had a chance of making a comeback. The young lady didn't stop with one orb, she created 2 more and sent them into the tornado. With the current boost the tornado got, its strength increased significantly. At this rate, it would even be able to trouble someone in the 9th stage of the Overlord plane. The only reason this was possible was all because of the time the young lady was afforded. With her current strength, she naturally was no match for a 9th stage Overlord plane genius. The man in charge of the platform was about to step in and announce the winner. But just as he was about to step into the platform, rumble. The sound of heavy thunder reverberated across the entire arena. Lightning clouds gathered above the platform, and the dark tornado once again had silver light shining in it. This time, it was brighter than the previous time. What? The young lady, as well as the crowd, was shocked. They never thought Reynolds would not give up just yet, and from the sound of the thunder, they could all tell something was about to happen. Chapter 727. Rumble. The sound of the thunder increased as the platform shook vigorously from the sound of the thunder. Inside the tornado, the silver light was getting brighter with time. It was as if a lightning storm was taking place inside the tornado. The young lady couldn't let her victory slip away. Without caring for Reynolds' safety, she created more orbs and sent them into the tornado. In 5 seconds, she sent in over 10 darkness orbs. At this rate, this tornado would kill an elementalist in the 9th stage of the Overlord plane easily. And even a peak Overlord plane elementalist would think twice before entangling themselves with it. To the dismay of the young lady, the lightning storm that seemed to be brewing inside the tornado didn't stop. Instead, it increased, fighting against the darkness. Everyone in the arena were off their seats as they watched the scene that was taking place. Reynolds was fighting back. Against all odds, he was fighting back. He would not take defeat so easily. Gray and Klaus exchanged glances, and a smile flashed across their faces. They knew Reynolds wouldn't lose so easily, but deep down, they could both sense their nervousness after the young lady started adding darkness orbs to the tornado. "I told you, he has not been defeated yet," Gray said to Kyle. Now Kyle understood why the trio had so much confidence in him even without seeing his figure. He could tell that the second Reynolds came out of the tornado, he would be a different person. Looks like he benefited from this, Kyle thought to himself. Rumble, buzz, crash. The sound of the thunder reverberated one more time, before a large bolt of lightning fell from the thunder cloud above the platform, falling straight into the tornado. Swoosh, bang. The tornado contracted before exploding out in all directions. The force of the explosion sent the young lady flying, but she made sure to stay on the platform. With the tornado gone and the lightning bolt slowly fading away, a figure soon started to appear in the view of everyone. "Where's his elemental warrior?" Gray asked after noticing only Reynolds was barely visible. "I haven't seen it since it was sent flying," Klaus replied. Gray turned to Alice and Kyle, but their response was a shake of their heads. They too had no idea where the elemental warrior was located. As time went on, the lightning faded off completely and the figure before them came into full view. It was a humanoid figure with lightning formed around the body like armor. "I can see the elemental warrior. But was Ray?" Klaus said. "That is Ray," Void replied. "Huh." Everyone around him, including Gray, turned to look at Void in shock. "That is Ray. He seems to have merged with the elemental warrior," Void replied. Just as Void said, after getting a good view of the figure, they realized it was Reynolds clothed with lightning armor. His present appearance was the same as the elemental warrior. The only difference was that he had facial features. Then there were a few places that didn't have lightning covering them, so the clothes he was previously wearing were visible. "Is this even possible?" Alice asked, stunned. "Shouldn't be, but as you can see with a lot of your friends, nothing is impossible," Void replied. Alice looked at Gray and then at Klaus. Void was right, for her friends, nothing was impossible. Gray had a freakish ability to comprehend any element, and even improve the elemental grade, while Klaus had virtually unreal luck. Klaus's luck would make the entire continent envious. Even those sitting at the top would feel jealous of his luck. Now, Reynolds just did something that shouldn't be possible. At the moment, she felt like the only normal person among these freaks. If people in the arena could hear her thoughts, they would riot. If she was normal, then what were they? At least she had a Seelie, What did they have? Just being friends with these people already made her abnormal to begin with. Reynolds was currently floating in the air, laughing like a maniac, which almost ruined the impressive image he just created in the eyes of everyone. The truth was, no matter what he did, it would be difficult for those in the arena to forget this scene. Even if Reynolds were to go on and lose this battle, they would still remember this scene. It worked. Ha ha ha. Reynolds laughed in delight in the sky with both hands spread apart. When he had the idea of merging with the elemental warrior some time ago, he never thought it would be possible. He had been experimenting with it a few times while also playing out a few scenarios in his head, but he was a bit skeptical about it. Now that he tried it, he got the surprise of his life. He had officially made something unique only to him. There might be other high-grade summoners, but none of them would be able to merge their bodies with that of their elemental warriors. The young lady looked at the figure above her, almost losing hope in the battle. The darkness particles she created on the platform were gone with the explosion of the tornado. This meant that for her to win, she had to start all over again. And compared to the first time, Reynolds seemed stronger. She gritted her teeth, and since Reynolds was still distracted by his success, she created another darkness orb like the beginning of the battle and sent it up. Reynolds noticed this, and before the darkness orb got over 10 meters into the air, he created a lightning sword and cut it in two. "It will not work against me for a second time. Don't mistake me for a fool," Reynolds said coolly after destroying the darkness orb. The young lady wore an annoyed expression when she saw that her plan was thwarted. She still didn't give up. After all, maybe all this was false bravado. Chapter 728. Boom, bam, bang. Reynolds started his attack on the young lady. The young lady blocked most of the attack as she countered as well. Reynolds didn't let the attacks disturb him. With a few movements, he dodged most of her attacks, while blocking the few he couldn't. His current attack power seemed to be on the 8th stage of the Overlord plane. The young lady stood no chance against the current him, and from the small interchange they had, she knew. But she didn't want to give up so easily. She has already missed her chance on getting into the faction of her choice. So the best way she could get into the faction of her choice was by getting into the top 10. Losing now means she wouldn't be able to get that. "I can't lose. I won't lose," she encouraged herself as she persisted through the attacks. Reynolds didn't hold back. After all, when the young lady was attacking a few minutes ago, she didn't give him a chance. Bam, bang. The young lady was pushed back by Reynolds' attack, but she retaliated soon after she got her footing. The audience shook their heads. They all thought the young lady would be victorious in this battle a few minutes ago, but presently it was clear for all to see that Reynolds would defeat her. She didn't want to give up. However, she was only delaying the inevitable. Against the current Reynolds, she would undoubtedly lose. "Do you think she might create a miracle as well?" Klaus asked. "Not a chance. She knows she has lost, she just doesn't want to accept it, because it would mean losing the chance of getting into the faction of her choice." Alice replied. Everyone could read the young lady's intent. It was clear she had a specific faction in mind, and the only way she could get in was by getting into the top 10. However, there's a chance that she might still get her wish. Forgetting the fact that she was about to lose to Reynolds, she was a powerful figure. If she didn't encounter Reynolds, then she would have at least an 80% chance of getting into the top 5. There has been no participant that has been able to pull off such a performance other than Alice and Reynolds. The other two who did this refused to continue the competition. Other than this young lady, there are a few others who might still be able to show such strength, but they hadn't gotten an opponent that made them go all out yet. This is the disadvantage of not taking the chance the first time. Had she challenged the faction she wanted, she had a good chance of getting into it. Kyle felt pity for the young lady who was giving her all on the platform. Boom, thud. The young lady was sent flying once again by Reynolds, falling onto the platform with a loud sound. She struggled to get to her feet, unwilling to give up. "You should give up, you can't win." Reynolds floated in the air as he looked down on his opponent. The young lady raised her head to look at him defiantly. "I said these words to you previously, but you managed to turn it around. We're not the same," Reynolds said in a straightforward manner. If the young lady thought acting like him would give her the chance of turning the battle around, then she was a fool. "I know." The young lady gritted her teeth angrily, and a hand made of black mass rushed toward Reynolds. "It's time to end this," Reynolds thought to himself. He looked at that hand coming his way, not a single fear in his eyes. Buzz. Swoosh. He shot past the hand, creating a gaping hole in it. After going through the hand, his next target was the young lady. Boom. Bam. He attacked continuously, and after almost 30 seconds, he once again sent the young lady flying. This time, he didn't leave her alone like before, rather, he continued attacking. The young lady didn't get the chance to stabilize herself before Reynolds came rushing in once again. She was sent flying once again, crashing into the ground. Rumble. Crash. A powerful thunderbolt fell from the sky, striking the young lady who was on the ground of the platform. The crowd looked at Reynolds, not expecting such brutality from him. They felt he would have been lenient with the young lady, but after thinking of how the young lady attacked him, they decided she deserved it. The sorry figure of the young lady came into view once again. She had blood on the side of her mouth, however, she still refused to admit defeat. Fine, I'll send you out of the platform myself, Reynolds said coldly, attacking the young lady once again. The young lady managed to put up a fight for a few more minutes, but she was ultimately knocked out of the platform, falling unconscious in the end, after straining herself too much. After defeating his opponent, Reynolds left his current form, and the lightning armor around his body faded off. He slowly fell to the ground, exhausted. Merging with the elemental warrior was taxing. If he stayed in this form for too long, he might fall unconscious as well. Luckily, he managed to defeat the young lady in the space of around 5 minutes. The man in charge of the platform walked forward to announce the winner, while a middle-aged man flew from the special seating area and enveloped the young lady with a white light. It was the use of the light element aiding the healing of the young lady. The young lady opened her eyes a few seconds later, disappointment visible in her eyes. No need to feel disappointed, you did your best. The middle-aged man smiled softly at her before going back to his seat. His words were correct. The young lady indeed did her best. She was just unfortunate in encountering the likes of Reynolds, who was a powerful opponent in his own right as well. Chapter 729. Surprised, Reynolds asked with a smirk when he got back to his seat. A little, Gray replied. What do you mean a little? He literally just merged with his elemental warrior. How could you not be mega surprised? Klaus questioned. The shocked expression when he found out Reynolds merged with the elemental warrior was out of this world. He was so happy for him that people would think he was the one who made such advancement. You're something else, Kyle complimented as he looked at Reynolds. If Reynolds used this to fight against him, he wasn't confident he would be able to win. When they fought at the competition the last time, he only gave up because he was getting frustrated by Reynolds' tactics, and wasting so much time because of a number 1 spot wasn't worth it. He was a carefree person who didn't really care about all these things. Thanks, Reynolds grinned before taking his seat. This time even more people flocked to their area. Reynolds' performance was outstanding, so he naturally made a lot of fans. There were a few ladies who wouldn't mind getting married to him right there and then. Klaus acted like his manager, dealing with everything. In no time, he had arranged a party in one of the inns in the city. Kyle was once again astounded by Klaus's socializing ability. He was on another level. While he was speaking, a young man walked forward. He was dressed luxuriously in ash and blue, and the air of a rich family was circulating around him. He was accompanied by a few others. Hello, I'm Joyner Crane. The young man introduced himself. I'm Klaus. This is Reynolds, Alice, Gray, and Kyle. Klaus was the one who stepped forward and spoke. He hit it off with that young man, and before long, the party was moved from an inn to the garden at the mayor's manor. Surprise, Joyner was the son of the mayor of this city. It wasn't unexpected that he came over to create ties with this group of geniuses. TA euros SA euros trademark show TAT 0. If he was having second thoughts before, Reynolds' last performance had shattered it. Joyner introduced the people following him, and they were all from one of the big families in the city. Although most of the families were fighting hidden battles, in places like this, they had to show a unified front. Gray and the group were moved over to a special sitting area, closer to the big family's geniuses, as well as the factions as well. When they got there, the young man from the Raiden faction Reynolds fought against, as well as the one who came over to invite him approached them. The person from the Asteroid faction also came over. Their sitting area was surprisingly the star of the place, and Klaus didn't let the chance go. A few of the ladies from the Moonlight faction came over, and he tried befriending them. Being a handsome young man, as well as having a friendly and vibrant personality, he made friends with 2 of them in a jiffy. This was one of the few times Gray had been in a situation like this. As much as he wanted to escape, he knew he couldn't. Luckily, he had been traveling with Klaus for some time, so he was able to speak with the people who came over. The battle for that day ended and the top 25 were picked. Now, it was time for the difficult situation. With 25 people present, they could only have 12 battles, making it 24 fighters, which would leave 1 person without an opponent. Even after they get this, there would be around 12 or 13 people, meaning 3 would have to be eliminated for the top 10 to be decided. Lots were drawn, and contrary to everyone's assumption, the hosts did something different. Instead of having someone not fight and automatically advance, one of the battles will have 3 participants, and only 1 would qualify. This would leave 12 participants left on for the competition. The last 3 winners from the battles except for the 3-way battle will fight against each other, and only 1 will advance to the next round. This means there's currently a time for all the fighters. If your battle takes too long, you stand a chance of being part of the 3. This might seem unfair for some, but not everyone could make it into the top 10. Only the very best can get to the top 10. Most of the participants prayed that either Alice or Reynolds got to fight in the first 3-way battle. The reason for this was that only the duo could fight against 2 people simultaneously easily. Alice had her Seelie, while Reynolds had his Elemental Warrior. This made the duo almost 2. There were a few people who were actually praying that both of them were part of the 3-way battle, so that one of them would be eliminated, or hopefully both of them. When they drew lots, Alice and Reynolds were not part of the 3-way battle, to the dismay of some people. Their opponents were powerful, but not on the level where they could trouble them. As things stand, it was already certain that Reynolds and Alice would be able to occupy 2 spots in the top 10. Those who wanted to join a particular faction felt frustrated. It was normal. The reason for this was that both Alice and Reynolds already got into the faction they wanted. Taking 2 spots in the top 10 would be meaningless to them, but since they wanted to participate in the competition, there was nothing they could do. A young lady who was one of the favorites was the one who unfortunately got into the 3-way battle. Being one of the favorites meant that her opponents would most likely team up to take her out of the platform, giving themselves a chance. The young lady felt hatred as she looked at Alice and Reynolds. After they finished drawing lots, she couldn't hide her anger. The others kept their distance. Since they weren't the unfortunate ones, it had nothing to do with them. Chapter 730. Later that day, Talon City's Mare Manor. Joyner got permission from his father to host Gray and his friends, and since they were already here, the geniuses from all the factions present were invited as well. The participants who managed to get into the top 100 were also invited. Given the current number of people present, the party was held on an open field. Gray and his friends sat at the front alongside members of the top factions, while Joyner, being the host of the party, sat facing the crowd. There was music, drinks, food, and other forms of entertainment, and the place was lively as expected. This party was held with the sole purpose of creating ties with each other. Everyone present were all well dressed. Gray wore a light blue overcoat with black trousers. Reynolds and Klaus both wore red and green overcoats respectively with black trousers as well. Alice wore white trousers with a peach long-sleeved shirt. Kyle was dressed in a simple short-sleeved shirt and blue trousers. The group was part of the focus of the show. A few geniuses came over to toast with them, while Klaus was very active. One minute he was here, the next he was somewhere else. People didn't take it as him trying to bootlick them, since all he did was share a glass of wine with them before leaving. Unknown to them, the only reason Klaus even went to other tables was that he didn't want the girls from the Moonlight faction to think they were his aim. That was the only table he wanted to go to, and following his plan, that was the last table he went to. He stayed there longer and managed to build some sort of relationship with the girls. Not all the girls were welcoming, nor did he try to befriend all of them. Going back to his seat, he realized a young lady was staring at Reynolds and Alice angrily. "What's going on here?" he asked as he took his seat. "Tell them to step down from the competition. They are already part of a faction. Doing this will only reduce the chances of others." The young lady said, "Don't you think your request is a bit, I don't know, odd? It's none of your business if we decide to continue fighting or not." Alice replied coldly, Old. You two are hoarding all the spots even after achieving your aim, and you call my request odd, the young lady said angrily. She knew her battle the next day would be difficult. Now she was looking for a way to vent her current anger. If she lost tomorrow, she would be incensed. Strength is all that matters, nothing else. Let your strength speak. If you're worth it, then the faction you want will surely seek you. Doing this only shows that you're unsure of yourself. Gray spoke up. Say whatever you want, but what they are doing is pathetic, the young lady said. The exchange between the young lady and Gray's group naturally caught the attention of those around. Some of the participants felt her claim was right. Alice and Reynolds had already gotten into a faction of their choice. What was the use in taking part in the competition any longer? One of the people who felt even more irritated with the duo was the young lady Reynolds eliminated. She walked over as well and joined the young lady to stir up trouble for the group. The others watched on with interest. There was nothing as entertaining as watching two parties fight, especially when the battle had nothing to do with you, nor would it affect you in any way. You said strength was all that matters, right? The young lady Reynolds eliminated asked Gray. Correct. Gray didn't back away. It wasn't like they could beat him. Fine, then I have an offer for you. Since you're friends with them, I believe you would be able to take the gamble. The young lady who was eliminated pointed at Gray. I'm not interested in gambling with desperate people. Gray didn't mince his words, and the young ladies were irritated even further. I thought you said strength was all that matters, the young lady asked. It is. Gray nodded. Exclamation point T euros SA euros trademark show T 0 euros exclamation point trademark T dot. Then if you're not afraid, take the gamble, the young lady said. If I may ask, what's the gamble? Klaus asked. He would fight against the two of us. If he manages to win, we won't speak of this issue again. But if we win, they would have to step down from the competition, the young lady said. Ha ha ha. You must be joking, right? Klaus laughed in amusement. No, I'm not, the young lady said. The young lady who was still in the competition thought about it, and felt this was an achievable thing, so she supported the young lady Reynolds eliminated. You must be stupid if you think we would agree to your words, Klaus said. The facial expression of the young ladies turned distorted, clearly infuriated with Klaus's words. You're placing a gamble that you will only gain and not lose. Where have you seen something like that happening before? Klaus asked with a mocking smile, before adding, if you so much as dare to take a gamble, then you must be ready to lose as well. Everyone listening to the conversation nodded in agreement with Klaus's words. There was no way they would gamble and not risk losing anything important. The two young ladies exchanged glances, and the issue ultimately fell on the shoulders of the young lady who was still part of the competition. They all knew what Klaus wanted. Since you want them to step down if you win, then you would step down as well if you lose. The young lady looked at Gray, thinking of her strength, then recalling how powerful the young lady Reynolds defeated was. She was over 100% confident they would defeat Gray. Reynolds and Alice might be powerful, but they couldn't fight the two ladies. They didn't want it to look like they were bullying them. This was why they picked Gray, who had a higher cultivation stage. I'll step down from the competition if we lose, the young lady said decisively. Ha ha ha. They're two, only you can't match up to our offer. Klaus laughed, annoying the young ladies even more. This is what will happen, she'll step down. Then since you've already been eliminated, you'll drop 500,000 high-grade essence stones as compensation. Chapter 731. What? The young lady exclaimed in shock. She didn't think Klaus would call such an amount. She might be from a well-off family, but she couldn't afford something like this. Even if she managed to find a way to get it, it would mean emptying her savings, and also borrowing from people as well. You can't take part in a free gamble now, can you? Klaus asked with an evil grin. Two of my friends might lose their chances of gaining the number 1 spot, while only her would lose her chance. That doesn't seem fair in my honest opinion. We'll pay it, the young lady who was still part of the competition said coolly. The young lady eliminated wanted to speak, but the other one whispered to her. Do you think we would both lose against a single person? The young lady who was part of the competition asked in a soft voice. The young lady who was eliminated shook her head. Now she understood why her partner didn't think much about it. They would win anyway, so there was no use in thinking about the stones. The truth was, normally, one of them could hold their own against a 7th stage Overlord plane elementalists, much less now that they were combining their strength. To them, they had already won the battle. After getting confirmation from them, Klaus gave out a mischievous smile. Bud, it's up to you now. Those stones are all yours. You know you'll be doing a lot of traveling once you leave here, Klaus whispered to Gray. Gray was taken aback when he realized the reason Klaus agreed to this gamble was just so he could get him essence stones. They've seen the cost of traveling, so they all knew it was extremely expensive. Gray had the idea of selling some of the items he had, but now he wouldn't need to. Klaus walked to the front of the place, facing everyone. Being someone who had gone to a lot of parties with his father, and even hosted a few, he was very good with this. He greeted everyone present before asking them to bear witness to the wager. With these geniuses from the top factions here, the young ladies would be unable to renege from it. The crowd agreed to it. They would get to watch a free battle. Not just that, but they've been waiting to see how powerful Gray or Klaus was. Since Alice and Reynolds were already this powerful, then the other two would be even more powerful. If they were not more powerful, they shouldn't be weaker. This was what the crowd felt. Joyner agreed with the battle, and called one of the guards in the Sage Plane to set up a platform for them, and also raise a force field to ensure that none of the battle ripples spread out. In no time, the platform was set. The young ladies were the first to step onto the platform. They were eager to defeat Gray. The young lady who was eliminated by Reynolds would not be able to join the competition again, but she wanted to make sure Reynolds didn't get the first or second position he desired. This might be petty, but she was annoyed by her defeat. Gray calmly walked to the platform. All eyes were on him. His facial features were well shown by the moonlight, and it was breathtaking. Klaus was handsome, but he paled in comparison with Gray. There were a few ladies who inadvertently started supporting Gray. Some were speaking about Gray's appearance. Being already used to this, Gray didn't let it distract him. This was one of the reasons he preferred wearing a mask. Keeping his face hidden would save him some trouble. Klaus still got glances from ladies, and since Klaus wasn't as cold towards strangers as Gray, things were easy for him. Gray didn't speak when he entered the platform. There was nothing to say to these ladies, although he had to say he pitied them since they fell into Klaus's evil hands. But he needed the stones, so there was no going back. Joyner was the one in charge of the battle. He walked into the platform. There's still time to back away from the bet. Once I call for the start of the battle, then it's certain. The platform remained silent. None of the people there spoke about stopping the bet. Since they wanted this, he had no right to stop it. Begin. He called for the start of the battle and left the platform. He didn't forget to warn them about endangering each other's lives. It was normal that in battles like this, people get hurt, but if any of them actively tried to kill anyone, then they would be punished accordingly. Kyle had seen Gray fight before, so he knew he was a powerful elementalist, but he still felt a little pessimistic about his chances of winning easily. Are you too sure about this? Kyle asked Alice and Reynolds. Of course, Gray needs the stones. Besides, they can't defeat him, Alice said with a confident smile. Kyle looked at them. He felt the same confidence as the time they said Reynolds would win. Could he really defeat these two? He asked himself. Gray was powerful. This was something he didn't dare to doubt, but the fact that he was fighting against two powerful geniuses made him question his ability. Of the two ladies, one was a multi-elementalist, while the other was a dual elementalist. Both surprisingly had the darkness element. The multi-elementalist was the one Reynolds defeated, while the other was the one who was still in the competition. The dual elementalist had the darkness and fire element. She was the first to attack Gray, giving the multi-elementalist the chance to create the darkness ball she used to weaken Reynolds. Gray saw this and smiled. He naturally couldn't be affected by this. For someone who stayed in a poison miasma for days, this was a joke to him. He didn't even bother with stopping her. Chapter 732. Boom. The dual elementalist's fire attack was blocked easily by Gray, who didn't give her any other chance to attack him. With a flicker, he disappeared from his current spot, appearing behind the multi-elementalist, who just finished completing her darkness orb attack. Are you done? Gray's indifferent voice came from behind her, and before she could turn around to see what was happening, Gray unleashed a fireball at her. The multi-elementalist managed to set up a windscreen in time, but she was sent flying by the impact of the attack. a space elementalist, and he also has a special fire. This will be difficult. The dual elementalist rushed over and used her hand to support the multi-elementalist from falling. Her current expression was one of distrust. The space element was known for its tricky nature. Gray could fight against the duo with this, since he could easily move his location. Gray's space element was not their only issue. The strength of his fire elemental attack was not something a regular 7th stage Overlord Plane elementalist should wield. For a second, she started to doubt their strength. It will only take a matter of time before he's unable to use them. Don't worry, victory is ours, the multi-elementalist said, confident in the skill she just used. The dual elementalist nodded. This wasn't the time to feel disheartened. How could I lose confidence so easily? He's just one person. She motivated herself before attacking once again. She created a large flaming bird that shot towards Gray. While the bird was going, the multi-elementalist used the wind element to create whirlwinds, also using a powerful breeze to hasten the movement of the bird. Gray didn't panic when he saw this. He motioned with his hand, and an earth wall appeared in front of him, blocking the attack that was shooting at him. Boom! The wall shook, and cracks appeared on its body of it, but it didn't fall apart. He's also an earth elementalist. The dual elementalist was shocked by this discovery. As if the space element wasn't enough, Gray was equipped with the earth element as well. This would make attacking him even more difficult. The battle just started, but Gray showcased a dominant momentum that stumped the two ladies. The crowd watching the battle was just as surprised. They never thought Gray would not only have more than one element, but he would wield 3, also having the rare space element as well. His fire was also special, which made him unique. The crowd felt a little satisfied since they had been waiting to watch someone other than Reynolds and Alice battle in the group. If Gray was powerful, it meant the same could be said for Klaus and Kyle. The geniuses from the top factions all watched Gray with serious expressions. Those in the 7th stage of the Overlord Plane were itching to get a chance to fight against him. They knew that their chances of fighting against the two ladies alone were minimal, so they felt an urge to challenge Gray, who seemed to be doing fine. While the crowd was speaking animatedly about the battles, Gray was holding his own against the young ladies. The dual elementalist was the main attacker, while the multi-elementalist acted as the support. The duo was surprisingly very good with their cooperation. After the first time they panicked, they had slowly grown into the battle, and since this was their first time fighting, they needed some time to get a bit of understanding about each other. Swoosh, boom, bang, bam. They exchanged blows. Gray was repeatedly going from one spot to another, dodging the attacks of his opponents, while also countering. The girls once again regained hope when they started to hold Gray down. The multi-elementalist was quite sensitive to the space element, so after the initial surprise she got from the first time Gray used the space element, she had been able to predict where he would appear. Even though she could do this, it didn't mean she could stop or harm him when he did. The time needed was very short, and Gray seemed to be moving in a certain pattern. This made tracking him hard, while getting to hold him down was difficult. Bang, bam. Gray's attacks collided with the attack of the dual elementalist. Behind him, a darkness orb exploded. He raised a wall behind him to block the attack, but the wall was broken. Gray wasn't shocked by this, since he could also feel the darkness element in him, slowly starting to get stronger than the first time he entered the platform. Such an amazing technique, however, it's not really beneficial to me, Gray thought when he sensed the change in him. The dual elementalist felt her darkness element getting stronger, and her confidence was over the roof. Now, she was certain they would win. Gray blocked their attacks, disappearing to safety whenever he couldn't block the attacks. Meteor descent. Gray's figure went airborne, and the combination skill of the earth and fire element took place. Seeing the large boulders covered by fire, the ladies prepared themselves to block the attack. Bam, bang, boom. The platform shook vigorously from the multiple explosions. The multi-elementalist was opportune to sneak up on him and attack. Gray sensed this on time and spread both hands together. He was covered with a powerful fire dome that shot in different directions. The multi-elementalist was forced to block. While Gray was dealing with the multi-elementalist, the dual elementalist had started attacking Gray once again. Their current method was something Reynolds was very familiar with. They were using their advantage in numbers to divide Gray's focus. Even though Gray was powerful, there was no way he could defeat the duo so easily. The only thing that the multi-elementalist found odd was that Gray's strength didn't seem to be reducing. Swoosh, boom. They continued fighting. Gray was simultaneously blocking and countering their attacks. To those watching the battle, Gray was doing something that he shouldn't be able to do. Only a few of the 7th stage Overlord Plane Elementalists here had the confidence in being able to defeat the young ladies. Chapter 733. Bang! The dual elementalist was pushed back by Gray, but before Gray could capitalize on the situation, the multi-elementalist moved in to block him. Swoosh! Boom! A powerful thunderbolt shot towards Gray. Gray dodged it by a hair's breadth, before using a large earth hammer to slam the multi-elementalist from the side, sending her flying. The multi-elementalist managed to ensure she wasn't hurt by the attack, but the force of the attack still rocked her internal organs. Gray never went easy on ladies. To him, every opponent is an enemy, whether male or female. He does not discriminate. The dual elementalist stepped forward to block Gray, while the multi-elementalist tried to recover from the shake she got from the previous attack. Gray didn't give them the chance to combine their strength. The small time they combined their strength, he felt a little pressured. It wasn't really something he couldn't deal with, but it was better he had them separated. Boom, bam, bang. Gray and the dual elementalist exchanged blows, but it was evident who was the stronger person. With every attack, Gray was able to push her back. The multi-elementalist rushed in a few seconds later, attacking Gray from behind. Caught in a pincer attack, Gray didn't panic. With a flicker, he switched places with the dual elementalist, sending out his own attack as well. The dual elementalist appeared in the middle of 3 attacks. She was able to change the direction of her attack, using it to block the attack of the multi-elementalist. But Gray's attack had the freedom it needed to strike her cleanly. The multi-elementalist reacted quickly, sending out a gust of wind which pushed the dual elementalist away from the position. Bam! Gray's attack missed the dual elementalist. He was surprised by the quick reaction of the dual elementalist. Most people he had switched places with usually tend to be confused since their position was changed. This showed the high battle sense of the young lady. The main reason he didn't switch places with the multi-elementalist was because she had a high sensitivity to the space element. The crowd, on the other hand, were going nuts when they witnessed Gray's switch skill. It was a unique technique that they had not seen before. It was a tricky skill to defend against, and experiencing this once would make one wary of attacking. The fact that Gray could easily switch places with his opponent made him almost undefeatable. Most of the space elementalists in the place were thinking deeply about how Gray managed to do the switch. They were also space elementalists like him, but they've never been able to think of this, much less try it. Now they finally knew that this group of friends were not to be joked with. They previously thought Reynolds and Alice were freaks. Gray had only shown a sliver of his strength, but they already rated him higher than the other two. The reason for this was very simple. The strength he was displaying was uncommon. Not just that, but his battle strategy as well as his techniques made it an opponent no one wanted to fight. A few of the late-stage Overlord Plane Elementalists who registered for the competition had looks of wariness. Encountering Gray early on in the competition would be a nightmare, especially for those in the 7th and 8th stages. As things stand, they all knew that only those in the 9th stage could keep up with him. From Alice and Reynolds' previous battles, they knew Gray hadn't shown his real strength, yet he was still able to not only fight the ladies, but was completely suppressing them as well. What they were all wondering was why he wasn't having any reactions to the darkness particles on the platform. The battle had been ongoing for over 3 minutes now, but Gray's strength didn't seem to reduce the slightest. "How long do you think he'll keep playing?" Klaus asked Reynolds. 1 or 2 more minutes. "He must be trying something out," Reynolds replied. I think the same as well." Klaus nodded. Alice joined in on the conversation as they spoke about the battle. They weren't the least bit bothered about Gray. He was clearly capable of taking care of himself against the young ladies. Some of the people from the top factions who were close to them were dumbstruck by their conversation. How could they say Gray was playing? He was obviously having an intense battle with the young ladies, yet his friends said he was playing. Could this mean that he's even stronger than we think? This was the question on their minds. Everyone watching the battle were dumbfounded by how things were going. They originally thought Gray would no doubt lose, or even if he would win, it wouldn't be by a large margin. But the reality of things is a little different. Gray seemed to be strolling to victory, comfortably. Bang, boom, bam. Gray's figure flashed through the platform as he attacked repeatedly. An earth pillar rose from the ground where the multi-elementalist was standing, and before she could react to it, she was already over 10 meters in the air. Looking at her side, she saw Gray looking at her with a smile. Her heart sank and she tried to attack, but Gray's figure flickered, and he was nowhere to be seen. The dual elementalist as well as the crowd witnessed a jaw-dropping scene soon after. Gray's figure flashed, and it was as if he was 5 people attacking at the same time from different positions. This was only an illusion due to how fast he was changing positions. The multi-elementalist was sandwiched by the attack, unable to block any attack. Her screams of pain reverberated across the place. The dual elementalist wanted to retreat. She knew since the multi-elementalist had been taken out, she stood no chance against Gray on her own. You tried to kill her, she said, trying to distract Gray. Heh, she's sleeping over there, you'll join her soon. Gray used his eyes to show the dual elementalist where the multi-elementalist was located. To her surprise, she didn't have any injuries on her body, and just as Gray said, she was only unconscious. Chapter 734. Crash. Bang. The dual elementalist was sent flying, and before she could get to the ground, Gray was already waiting for her. With a wave of his hand, an earth pillar hit her, sending her into the air. After being hit by the first earth pillar, 5 more appeared in the sky, all creating a circle. She was hit by another earth pillar which sent her in the direction of another pillar. This went on for a few seconds longer, and the crowd watched on in pity. Gray was merciless in his battle, and from what he was doing, everyone knew the reason he was doing this was that the young ladies troubled his friends. From the small time they had seen him, he rarely spoke with others. I never knew he was evil, Kyle said. You have no idea what he's capable of. He's not really evil like Klaus, but whenever someone close to him is threatened, he becomes this. If not for the fact that this was only a bet, things would have been worse for them. Honestly, I'd rather face Klaus than face an annoyed Gray. Alice clarified things to Kyle, who was starting to look at Gray in a new light. Oh, the overprotective type. Kyle understood what Alice meant. Gray was among the type of people who were very protective of their close friends and family. The battle ended a few seconds later, since Gray didn't want the young lady to suffer for too long. Although she was being hit by the earth pillars, they didn't really cause any physical injuries to her. Her innards might be rocked, but it was nothing serious. Gray made sure she didn't pass out, since someone had to honor the bet. Aren't you going to announce the winner? He turned to Joyner. Joyner still had his mouth wide open as he watched how Gray brutally beat up the young ladies. He gulped in fear, thinking of what Gray might do to someone if it was a true life and death battle. The fact that he could do this in a spa showed that he was a ruthless individual. He walked over to the platform to declare Gray the winner. It wasn't as if everyone didn't know, but to make it seem official. The young lady who was conscious looked at Gray with hatred, then his eyes turned to Klaus, who was already on the platform, looking at him with a mischievous smile. The stones, hand them over. Klaus stretched out his hand. The young lady was still in a kneeling position, trying to catch her breath. Klaus didn't even give her any time before he came to draw his debt. Since they won the bet, it meant the stones were his, so he had every right to ask for them. The stones weren't a problem for that young lady. She could afford them, but for some reason, she felt a knot in her heart. Losing to Gray was something she still couldn't believe actually happened. What she found more unbelievable was the manner of their loss. Gray beat them like they weren't even able to use their elements. They were two geniuses. Gray was only a stage ahead of them. How did he do it? What are you? She didn't answer Claw's question. Instead, she questioned Gray. I'm me, Gray said before stretching out his hand. Now, pay up. The young lady almost went crazy when she saw this. She thought Klaus was crazy, but it seemed like Gray was even crazier. I can't give up my chance in the competition, the young lady said through gritted teeth. Even better, come, I believe we can work something out, Klaus said with a friendly smile. Reynolds and Alice looked at the young lady with pity. Whenever Klaus made such a face, he was about to rip someone off. This was Klaus's plan from the start. The 500,000 essence stones were only the appetizers. Requesting for this would show the young lady that he was a greedy or money-hungry type, which meant she would try to buy her way back into the competition. Since she made the bet with Klaus and his friends, they could naturally change the stakes as long as both parties agreed to it. Gray shook his head and let Klaus take care of things there. He went back to their seat. He was barely exhausted from the battle. "Just how strong are you?" Kyle asked. Some youths from the Raiden and Astaret faction were currently seated close to them. "I'm not sure," Gray replied. This was the truth. His strength couldn't be estimated with these types of battles. Only when he's using all 8 elements would he be able to show his full strength. At the moment, he was unaware of his real strength. "I can't wait till I get to a stage where I wouldn't need to fear showing all my elements. That will be the time I'll be at my peak." Gray sighed internally. Sometimes, he thought of ways to show all his elements, but he hasn't been able to come up with a good excuse yet. He planned to start using 5 elements soon enough. Since 4 elements were the rarity here, there must have been times in history when someone would come out with 5 elements. He wasn't sure if there were any people with 5 elements currently, but he planned to use them. This would give him more versatility when fighting, and he could use more elements as well, increasing his strength. The youths from the factions felt Gray was arrogant with his words. Everyone knew the extent of their strength, so saying this only made it look as if he wanted to look mysterious. Kyle also felt maybe Gray didn't want to tell him how powerful he is, so he didn't ask about it any longer. Klaus and their young lady walked back some minutes later, and to the shock of everyone, she apologized. Not just her, but the multi-elementalist had regained consciousness and also accompanied them. The discussion between Klaus and the young lady was unknown to the others, but she didn't seem to be as angry as she used to be. Of course, there was a pained expression which meant Klaus had ripped her off of Essence Stones. Chapter 735. Gray's battle opened the ceremony, and others started to spar as well. There were a few rival factions around, so they took this opportunity to show which faction was stronger. The party lasted till midnight before everyone went back to their places. Joyner invited Gray and his friends to sleep over at the mayor's manor, but Klaus surprisingly turned him down. It was unexpected since Klaus had always been the one who preferred comfort. Staying in the mayor's manor is obviously more comfortable than staying in an inn. When Reynolds asked Klaus why he refused, he said something along the lines of "People aren't always what they seem. It's best not to let them get too comfortable with you." The next day came soon enough, and the news of Gray's battle had naturally spread across the city. When the group arrived at the arena, they got all the attention once again. This time, Klaus and Gray, who hadn't fought any battles, were the ones who were getting all the spotlight. Reynolds and Alice might be strong, but they were undoubtedly weaker than Klaus and Gray. In times of danger, the duo would be the ones who would shoulder the burden. They went to the special seating area, since Klaus felt returning to their previous seats would look strange. Time went by and it was Reynolds' turn to fight. Of the duo, he was the first person called up. His opponent was a young lady in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. She knew she wasn't his opponent, but she still tried her best. Reynolds wasn't forced to the extent of merging with his elemental warrior, but the young lady managed to put up a good fight. After defeating her, Reynolds secured a spot in the top 10. This didn't surprise the crowd since they felt other than Alice and at most 2 others, he didn't have anyone who could force his hand any longer. Alice was called up a few minutes later, and just like Reynolds, she won her battle convincingly. Her opponent couldn't last up to 5 minutes on the platform. She showcased her ferocious fighting style once again. Only those who watched Gray's battle the previous night felt Alice was actually very lenient. Gray literally played a game with a human, hitting the young lady from one side to another. That was just pure evil. T exclamation point TA euros SA euros trademark so T0 euros exclamation point trademark T dot. The most anticipated battle of this round was none other than the 3-way battle. Although it was a 3-way battle, everyone knew that the young lady Gray fought against the previous night would be ganged up on. She was the favorite to win a singles battle, but against 2 people, unless she went above her limit or came up with an ingenious fighting strategy, it would be difficult for her to win. When the battle started, she didn't give her opponents the chance they needed, attacking straight away. Fighting against Gray the previous day opened her eyes to new things, and surprisingly, she made a small advancement after her defeat. Gray was the first to notice the increase in her strength. The others also managed to sense it a few moments later. The young lady shocked the entire arena when she defeated one of her opponents in the opening exchange. Unlike what others expected, she went all out, catching the young man by surprise. Before the young man managed to regain himself, the young lady had already sent him out of the platform. There were a few people who found it strange, but those powerful individuals knew this was all the young lady's doing. Everyone expected her to stay on the defensive once the battle started, her opponents included. But she took the initiative, and it benefited her, since her opponent was caught unaware by her aggressiveness. With one person eliminated, her victory was as good as certain. The overall battle lasted just over 5 minutes, but she won comfortably. She surprisingly looked at Klaus and mouthed the words, "Thank you." Only a few people caught sight of it, Gray and his friends part of them. "What did you tell her?" Alice asked curiously. "Just a few words of advice," Klaus said with a mysterious smile. "Are you sure she didn't do this because she felt like killing someone and you're not available?" Gray joked. "Possibly. But she learned some things from her battle with you, so I did contribute to her victory. Also, I told her the best way to win against her opponents, who had already seen her show her weakness during the battle last night, was to take the initiative and eliminate one of the duo as soon as the fight started." Klaus chuckled before explaining. He also added, "Had she missed her chance, things wouldn't be this smooth." "Is that all?" Reynolds asked with a cunning smile. "Of course not. I told her the only way to get married to Gray was if she took the first place. So, be prepared, she will be coming for the first position with her life." Klaus winked at Gray. Gray's eyes twitched a few times when he heard this, while those around burst out laughing. Klaus was a fun person to be with, and it was already evident. Kyle had already started to miss Klaus, even though he hadn't joined a faction yet. With the top 10 people now confirmed, the remaining 8 who hadn't gotten into a faction of their choice were given the chance to choose a faction before continuing the competition. They refused, opting to wait after the competition ended or maybe when they were eliminated. The reason they did this was simple. Once they get into a faction now, they will feel pressured to perform exceptionally well because they were part of a top faction. Losing against Reynolds and Alice would then be slightly disappointing. Since they've decided on doing it this way, they drew lots for the start of the next round. There was still time to not only decide the top 5, but probably the number 1 and 2 spots. Chapter 736. The top 10 participants stood on the platform, each staring at their would-be opponents. Alice got a dual elementalist in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane, who just like her, had both the lightning and fire element. Reynolds' opponent was also in the 6th stage, a water elementalist. Presently, Reynolds and Alice were the only participants left that weren't in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. Of the remaining 8 people, one of them, in particular, seemed to be stopping himself from breaking through to the 7th stage. Other than Alice and Reynolds, he was the one who had the highest chance of getting the top spot. The young lady Gray beat up was just below him. The participants were all given a 2 hours break to recover their strength. None of the people in the arena left, rather, they stayed and spoke of the previous battles. What excited everyone was the fact that this wasn't the end of the competition. There was still the highly anticipated late-stage Overlord plane battle that would start the next day. There, they would see the geniuses at the top of the Overlord plane. These were the people who had the highest attraction in the competition. 2 hours went by in the blink of an eye, and the competition continued. Alice was the first person to step up. Being in the 5th stage, she was slightly weaker than her opponent. Although, even without using the Seelie, her opponent couldn't guarantee defeating her. Since there were only 5 battles taking place, the factions felt it was better to watch them one at a time. This would let them focus on the person they want to. When the battle started, Alice didn't immediately call upon her Seelie. She didn't want to always rely on it, so she preferred fighting on her own. Then when things went beyond her, she would summon it. Nevertheless, this didn't mean that she wasn't making use of the ice attribute of the Seelie. It was a great defensive element. Not using it seemed like a waste. When the fight started, Alice as usual took the initiative of attacking first. Knowing she would do this, her opponent didn't rush into attacking, wary of her troublesome ice. He blocked the attack before countering. Alice evaded the attack before attacking. They exchanged moves for a while, and no one seemed to have a clear advantage. But with time, the young man soon started to attack with more intensity. Alice held on against the young man since she had a powerful defense. Breaking the ice was extremely difficult, since it has self-healing properties, and the most troublesome thing about it was its ability to fight back. This almost made it an opponent since once it was attacked, it would fight back. Alice used the ice to shield herself, balancing the battle. The young man couldn't take a clear advantage, while she wouldn't be defeated at this rate. They continued fighting, and after almost 5 minutes, Alice decided it was time to call out the Seelie. The young man was a tricky opponent, and he was extremely cautious. When the Seelie came out, the young man suddenly exploded out with frightening attacks. It almost looked like he had been waiting for it to come out all this while. He managed to break through the ice wall Alice used to protect herself from his attacks in the span of 3 seconds, not giving the ice any time to heal. The crowd watched excitedly as the battle peaked. Alice brought out the Seelie only to see another side of her opponent. The young man managed to send her flying, but the Seelie made it impossible for him to capitalize on it. Alice almost fell off the platform. Luckily, the Seelie created an ice wall that stopped her from moving. The impact of the attack from the young man made her slam into the wall, causing cracks to form on it. She looked at the young man, a little surprised by his present strength. Gray and his friends watched the battle as usual. They guessed the young man was wary of the Seelie, so he waited until Alice called it out before trying to take her out with one swift blow. His plan was almost successful. Unfortunately, Alice was able to reduce the impact of the attack just before it reached her. Alice prepared herself for the young man's attacks. While fighting, she was surprisingly not able to get the advantage even with her Seelie. This was the first time this young man was showing such strength. He had never been a favorite to win, but with the strength he was displaying, he was in no way weaker than those viewed highly by the others. Alice and the young man continued fighting. She blocked, evaded, and countered. The young man also did the same. The only reason he had been unable to defeat Alice was the Seelie. It had been able to help her fight against him. Not just that, but its attacks were very powerful, so he had to be extra careful when attacking. He hid well, Gray commented. To think there's someone this powerful among them, Kyle added. Alice's opponent was slowly gaining the upper hand even with the Seelie helping Alice. Currently, it was unknown if Alice would be able to win this battle. If Alice won, it wouldn't bring down the young man, since he showed great strength. If the young man were to win, it still wouldn't affect Alice's image. The young man was very good, so losing to him was not unexpected. Who do you think would win? Kyle asked. Alice. Gray and the other two replied before he even finished the question. They were all very confident in themselves and their friends. If it was a battle they couldn't win, they had no qualms with admitting it. But this was not a battle Alice couldn't win. The only thing was that her chances weren't as high as it would be if she were fighting against someone weaker than this young man. Chapter 737. Boom, bang, bam. Alice's battle raged on. It was already over 10 minutes now, and both fighters had gotten chances to end the fight. However, they always managed to find a way to escape. The young man in particular had gotten more chances, but the Seelie made sure it was impossible for him to capitalize on it. The times he's gotten the chances were all when the Seelie was distracted with an attack. Alice was not a weak opponent either, so she was able to hold her own against him. Alice has had fewer chances to end the battle, but the young man was ingenious in his way of using the lightning element. This has helped him avoid catastrophe. The battle went on for 3 more minutes, and a great chance finally presented itself to the young man. As usual, the Seelie was focused on an attack he sent out. Alice was also trying to evade an attack. Before Alice started moving, he had already predicted the direction she would face, so after sending out an attack that would stop the Seelie from intervening once again, he rushed after Alice and started an onslaught of attacks. Alice felt immense pressure from the attacks, but she didn't let it get to her. The pressure made her push herself to go further. Boom, bam, bang. She was sent flying, but before the young man released another attack, she dished out an attack of her own. The young man evaded the attack before he continued his attack on Alice, who was mid-air. Alice used the lightning element to its fullest, moving around on the platform. Behind her was the young man. The exchange became very fast. To ensure that he had to fight only Alice, the young man occasionally attacked the Seelie before it broke through an attack. Both fighters were moving at an insane speed. To those with lower levels, all they could see were two lightning streaks clashing with each other. The Seelie wasn't held back for long, and it soon joined in on the attack. The young man had already placed his all on this particular attack, and he was pretty confident he would be able to deal with Alice before the Seelie was free. He never thought Alice would be able to hold on. From the time he attacked the Seelie till now, it was only around 20 to 30 seconds. However, he had exchanged multiple blows with Alice. This was the chance he had to eliminate her, but he failed. Alice, knowing that the Seelie was free once again and the young man would most likely try to think of a way to disengage, stopped running and rushed toward the young man. She attacked him head-on. With no choice, the young man was forced to block the attack, making him pause for a second. The Seelie caught up with them at this time and attacked from behind. Alice continued her frontal assault while the Seelie attacked from behind. A pincer attack. The young man's opportunity turned into Alice's in the end. If not for her personal strength, then she would have lost the battle already. 2 minutes later, the young man was unable to hold on any longer, and after getting repeatedly hit by Alice and the Seelie's attacks, he fell on one knee and gave up on the fight. Fighting any longer was useless, since he would only bring harm to himself. With him admitting defeat, Alice stopped attacking and, just like him, started gasping for air. The battle was on another level. It was one of the most intense battles so far. Reynolds's battle with that multi-elementalist was the best in the opinion of the crowd. "You almost got me," Alice said as she looked at the young man. "Almost. But you won in the end." The young man shook his head with a sigh of disappointment. "I was lucky. Without my Seelie, you would win," Alice said. She was clearly relieved and happy by the fact that she won. Fighting against powerful opponents like this made it entertaining. The pressure would be able to push her to grow stronger. The young man smiled, turned to the special sitting area where the elders from the top factions were seated, and announced the faction he wanted to join. It was a fire-based faction. Although he had two elements which were lightning and fire, his fire element was the strongest, so he naturally wanted to focus more on that. Alice returned to her seat with a calm expression. "Good thing you didn't lose." Klaus gave her a thumbs up. "If I lost against someone as powerful as him, I don't think I'd feel bad about it," Alice said. "No one would. It's just I prefer that you won. This will make me get a better ranking in their eyes," Klaus said with a smile. "All you think about is joining an all-girls faction." Alice looked at him with disgust. "Because they have the best ice skills in the region," Klaus explained before continuing. "You two already joined the best factions for the lightning element. Why should I settle for less?" "You do have a point. However, it would be extremely difficult to get into an all-girls faction. There's a reason it's an all-girls faction, and that's because they don't accept males." Alice took a seat as the next fighters got ready to enter the platform. It was the young man who was on the verge of breaking through to the 7th stage. His opponent was someone in the 6th stage like him, but when the battle started, it took him only 5 minutes to dispatch his opponent. "You two have a powerful competition," Klaus said with a grin. Alice and Reynolds knew he was doing this to annoy them, so they tried not to think about it. The young lady Grey beat the previous night was the next fighter. Her opponent was a wind elementalist, but he lost in the end. 3 battles were already fought and decided. Now it was left for the remaining 2 battles. Then the top 5 would be decided. Chapter 738. According to the order of the lots drawn, Reynolds would be the last person to fight. The duo fighting before him were 2 ladies. One was a fire elementalist, while the other was a light elementalist. When the battle started, the light elementalist got the advantage in speed, giving her a slight edge over her opponent. Her opponent, however, had greater destructive power. After a hard-fought battle, the light elementalist won by a slight margin. With her victory, it was time for Reynolds's battle. Reynolds's opponent was a water elementalist in the 6th stage of the Overlord plane. Standing in front of the young man, Reynolds wore a calm expression. He didn't feel pressured in any way, nor did he show any proud expression. "Go easy on me," the young man said with a smile. Reynolds nodded and didn't reply. The young man's words actually made him cautious. There might be a reason behind his words, and from what he knew, people who say things like this tend to be very powerful later on. "I'll beat the crap out of him from the start, just to be sure," he thought to himself. If the young man was going to show an unseen strength like Alice's opponent, He didn't want to give him the chance to. Beating him up as soon as the fight started was the best choice. As soon as the man in charge called for the start of the battle, Reynolds merged with his elemental warrior and attacked. The young man was stunned. Not just him, but everyone around the arena as well. Reynolds had only merged with the elemental warrior once. Since then, he hasn't done it again. The reason was because he hadn't encountered anyone that could force him to that length. What he had been doing since was to call out the elemental warrior and attack with it. Even at those times, he would first test out his strength only after seeing the difference in strength. Would he call out his elemental warrior? This battle was different. He not only called out the elemental warrior right off the bat, but he even merged with it, entering his most powerful state. Isn't this bullying? The young man screamed in his heart. His face was twitching from the shock he was receiving, literally. Reynolds was a lightning elementalist, so his attacks packed quite a punch. It also had a high chance of electrocuting his opponents. The young man was unfortunate to be subject to multiple lightning attacks in the space of a few seconds. The battle ended even before it started, the shortest battle ever recorded in the history of the competition. It took Reynolds less than a minute to defeat the young man. That was beyond embarrassing. This was someone who made it into the top 10, yet he couldn't last a minute. The ultimate disgrace. As the young man was leaving the platform, a question was repeatedly ringing in his head. What did I do to deserve this? He couldn't even pick a faction due to the shame he felt. Being defeated in such a short time, even if the opponent is way more powerful than he is, was still embarrassing. He was even 2 stages ahead of Reynolds. How could he raise his head in society again? If the young man knew the reason behind Reynolds' action, he might probably challenge him to a battle to the death. Who had a hidden strength? I was only begging you not to beat me up too much. What underlying meaning was there? In fact, FKU. The young man left the arena entirely. 80% of the people here were certain he didn't even know how he left the stage. His eyes were listless, clearly still dazed from the incident. The entire arena was deathly silent. They still couldn't believe what just happened. From when the man declared the start of the battle till when it ended was just too short. Some people didn't even manage to witness it because they were distracted by one thing or the other. Reynolds, on the other hand, had an awkward expression on his face. He didn't think the young man wouldn't be able to fight back. When the young man made that statement, he thought maybe the young man was just like Alice's opponent, a hidden genius. He didn't know the young man had already shown all his cards to get into the top 10. Now, he kind of felt sorry for him. No matter what, the young man would be unable to forget the incident of this day, especially given the fact that he was going to join a faction because of it. I hope I didn't ruin his life, Reynolds muttered as he walked back to his seat. What happened? Klaus couldn't help but ask. Reynolds recounted what the young man said, and the underlying meaning he felt was behind his words. Ha ha ha. He might die of anger if he found out this was why you beat him up so quickly. Klaus was unable to hold back his laughter. The incident was just too funny to him. Reynolds' reason was even funnier. Gray smiled when he heard it as well. It was ultimately a misunderstanding, but it will take a lot before the young man would be able to get himself back together. Losing in this manner is mind-shattering, especially for someone who regards himself as a genius. He even entered the top 10, which showed that he truly was a genius. You should have gone easy on him, Klaus said and started laughing once again. It's not funny, Reynolds said, making Klaus laugh even more. After laughing to his full, he shook his head with a sigh. The sigh is clearly not of pity. The man in charge of the battle finally managed to regain himself and stepped forward. Since the top 5 had been decided, it was time to get the first and second person. There were 5 people present, and only 2 of them could get the first or second position. Everyone waited patiently on how the last round would be fought. Chapter 739. The method of the last round was soon announced, and the crowd were taken by surprise. This was the best method they felt would be implemented. However, thinking about it, they felt it was actually the most plausible choice. It had its disadvantages, but it wasn't without its advantages as well. All 5 participants will be involved in a brawl. They would all be ranked by the first person eliminated to the last person standing. The greatest disadvantage of this method was that 2 people could team up and take out the rest. In some cases, 4 people might team up to eliminate the strongest person. No one objected to it anyway, since there was nothing they could do. The only other method that was better than this would take too long, and the competition still had its last round, where the late-stage Overlord Plane Elementalists started their fight. The participants were given 3 hours to prepare for the final battle. As things stand, Alice and Reynolds had the advantage in it because they had been friends for some time now, so their synergy was very high. There's also a very good chance the other 3 would try to team up and take the duo out. This was what everyone expected from the fight, to be precise. Alice and Reynolds returned to their seats after the rules of the round were announced. "That's not really nice. How do you guys plan to work things out?" Klaus asked. He glanced at the other participants and unsurprisingly, they were all speaking with each other. This already showed their plan. First take out the 2 troublesome friends, then battle against each other. Fight together. Even if they team up, they won't have a level of understanding. Although they would have the advantage with higher numbers, we still have Alice's Seelie and my elemental warrior. Reynolds voiced his thoughts. "Yes, and besides, I'm not afraid of fighting 2 against 1, Alice said. Gray and Klaus spoke with them during the 3 hours they got to rest. Klaus in particular was giving them ideas on how to fight against the 3 people. It wouldn't be an easy battle, but with a good plan, they would be able to come out on top. The time of the battle finally came, and all 5 participants climbed on the platform. Given the size of the platform, it wasn't really an issue for them to fight there. But just to be on the safe side, the size of the platform was increased. When the group of 5 walked onto the platform, they separated. Reynolds and Alice stood on one side, while the other 3 stood on one side. 2 against 3. No offense, but I'd really like you 2 to be eliminated first, the young lady Gray beat up said to the duo. The light elementalist was the weakest in the group, so she would naturally be the target of Reynolds or Alice. However, just from the positioning of the trio, it was easy to see that the young lady and the young man noticed this as well. The light elementalist would act solely as support in this battle. Once they eliminate Alice and Reynolds, she would naturally follow, leaving only the young man and the young lady to fight for first and second place. Reynolds and Alice glanced at each other, and they understood each other's intentions. Alice planned to hold back 2 of them, while Reynolds quickly takes out the light elementalist. Even though she wasn't a threat alone, she couldn't be neglected. When the man in charge called for the start of the battle, Alice, Reynolds, the young lady, and the young man all attacked simultaneously. The light elementalist stood behind, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Reynolds summoned his elemental warrior from the start. The same went for Alice, whose Seelie was floating by her side. The young man who was suppressing his cultivation stage was a dual elementalist, having both the wind and earth elements. Boom, bang, the battle started fiercely. Alice was fighting against the young man, while Reynolds was fighting against the young lady. Other than the light elementalist, the others were currently locked in a heated battle. Swoosh, boom, bang. An opportunity presented itself, and the light elementalist attacked Alice, who was stuck in a stalemate with the young man. The young man used the chance to pressure Alice, forcing her back. Reynolds, seeing this, let the elemental warrior deal with the young lady, and he rushed over to help fight against the young man. The Seelie helped block most of the attacks. Reynolds was forced back when the light elementalist joined the young lady, and they started harassing the elemental warrior. Reynolds started fighting against the duo. With the help of his elemental warrior, he didn't feel too pressured by them. Alice and the young man continued their fierce battle. The young man was one of the best earth users Alice had ever encountered. The wind element complemented his speed, so he had most of his weaknesses covered. Boom, bam, crash, buzz. The fight was everything the crowd thought it would be. Fierce, entertaining, and downright exciting. They were all caught in a conversation. Some people felt Alice and Reynolds had a chance against the trio, while others felt they would be defeated. Who do you think would win this? Kyle asked Gray. The battle is still in its early stages, it's difficult to predict. But I naturally want my friends to come out victorious, Gray replied. For the first time, Gray didn't have full confidence his friends would win. If they were only fighting against 2 people, he would believe they had a chance. But the light elementalist, who seemed meek, was a very cunning figure. She attacked ingeniously, making life hell for the duo. To the surprise of everyone, the figure who they felt wouldn't make much of an impact became the standout performer on that platform. She was using her opportunity well, and with her around, it was almost impossible for Alice and Reynolds to win the trio. Chapter 740. Boom, bam. Reynolds was pushed back by the young lady. She was a tough opponent to begin with. Having the light elementalist by her side made things worse for Reynolds. Alice was having a slightly better time since the light elementalist had been focused on Reynolds' end of the battle. She coordinated with the Seelie and managed to gain the upper hand. However, just as she was about to gain the advantage, the light elementalist rushed over to intervene. When she arrived, Alice was forced to block her attacks. This gave the young man the chance he needed to regain himself. He had a natural good defensive ability just like Alice. Alice had more elements which gave her the advantage when it came to attacking. The Seelie was slowly getting better after getting involved in so many battles over the past few days. Previously, it mostly relied on Alice's orders, but now, it could actually make good decisions of its own. It was only a child when Alice got it, and it hadn't really been a long time since she got it. The light elementalist managed to distract Alice once again. Now, Alice was fighting against two, while Reynolds was on his own. He was fighting with his elemental warrior, so he was able to gain the upper hand in the battle. The young lady was by no means a weak opponent as well. Even though he had the upper hand, it would take him a while before he could defeat her. Merging with the elemental warrior would give him a boost in strength, but he still wouldn't be able to defeat the young lady in a short time. Reynolds contemplated if he should merge with the elemental warrior now and try to eliminate the young lady, or wait for the best time. Since the light elementalist was not here, he might get the chance if he merged with it. The only issue was that, given the speed of the light elementalist, she would be able to return in the blink of an eye. With this in mind, he decided against it and opted to wait for the best time. Taking out the light elementalist was still the plan, but since she didn't give them any chance to attack her, the thought of changing the plan came to mind. Swoosh, bam, bang. Lightning attacks flew around, with wind blades slashing at Alice. The ice made by the Seelie blocked most of the attacks, but the attack power of the young man was above that of others, so he was able to destroy the ice wall with a few attacks. After breaking the wall, light arrows shot straight past the ice wall that was still in the midst of falling down, rushing towards Alice. Alice, seeing the attack, covered her legs with the lightning element and dodged to the right. Bang, bam, boom. A €0 exclamation point trademark T. The light attacks hit the ground, and a small dust cloud rose up. Alice created a mixture of lightning and fire rain. The young man raised an earthen wall that blocked the attack, while the light elementalist swiftly capitalized on her speed and ran out of the range of the attack. The intensity of the battle was currently getting to its peak. It was only a matter of time before one person would be eliminated. Whoever is eliminated first might determine the outcome of the battle. If Reynolds and Alice managed to eliminate one of the trio, then their chances of winning would be over 50%. But if any of them were to be eliminated, it was clear that the other would follow. This would put the duo in 4th and 5th place. Reynolds focused on the young lady. The young lady's eyes started to glow with red light, as if a fire was burning in them. A small fire attack that was as thin as a needle shot out of her eyes, and went straight for Reynolds. Reynolds didn't see the attack on time, but his elemental warrior appeared in front of him. The fire needles hit the empty face of the elemental warrior, and for a second, it froze, incapable of moving. Reynolds also felt some distress from what happened to the elemental warrior. Gray was shaken when he saw this attack. It reminded him of a particular attack Sylvia used. She killed someone with nothing more than a look. Gray had always thought she used her powerful cultivation stage to pressure the man to death, only now did he know it wasn't. What was that? He asked curiously. A mental attack. It's very rare since very few people can cultivate it. Also, as long as the opponent notices it before you use it, then he could be avoided. Kyle explained. He already knew Gray and his friends weren't knowledgeable about the world, so whenever they inquired anything from him, as long as he knew what it was, he didn't mind telling them. A mental attack? Klaus asked. Yes, basically, it's usually used to incapacitate opponents. But if cultivated to a very high level, then it would become a deadly hidden weapon. According to legends, there was an expert who cultivated it to the very peak. All she needed was a glance, and an entire army would die, Kyle said. So powerful. Klaus sucked in a cold breath. Gray had witnessed Sylvia use it, so he guessed she could kill an entire army with just a look. But he didn't know what it was then. A mental attack. I'll research about it later on, he said to himself. He had to be prepared for anything in cases like this, where they would be attacked by techniques they had no idea how to counter. If this were a life or death battle, Reynolds might lose his life due to his lack of knowledge. Reynolds paused for only a few seconds, but the young lady didn't let the chance go to waste, attacking instantly. Bam! Bang! Reynolds's figure was sent flying, crashing into the ground. When the crowd saw this, they felt Reynolds would be eliminated in this process. Even the elemental warrior was still frozen. It was unknown when it might be able to move again. This is the end of this video. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed and wish you wonderful rest of the day. The silent Ruptors out.